and welcome to the deepest dive on Metroid Dread, the best, most thorough discussion about Metroid Dread on the internet. My name is Ben Hansen from MinnMax. I'm joined by Kyle Hilliard from MinnMax.
Hey, that's me. What's up?
Hey, not much. And Janet Garcia from MinnMax.
Yo, there's finally something to play on the Switch. Let's go.
Let's go. Also joined by former Game Informer reviews editor and Super Metroid superfan, Joe Juba. Welcome, sir.
Hey, thank you.
Thank you for being here, Joe. This is it, everybody. This is the deepest dive on Metroid Dread. If you're not familiar with the format, what we've done, because we're maniacs, is we took the game, broke it up just into 2 chunks so that we can play it along with the community, and they can submit comments over at patreon.com/MinnMax, and we're gonna be reading those comments on this show. It's a huge community game club. So we're gonna be tackling the first half of the game in this discussion, up until the point where you defeat the 4th Emmy, which is yellow. I don't know if there's more yellow ones, probably not. After you defeat the 4th Emmy, that's the stopping point. So we're not spoiling anything gameplay-wise, story-wise beyond that point, because that's where everybody is as a collective unit. Next week, we will be talking about the second half of the game. And so if you want to have us read your comment on the second half of Metroid Dread or just Metroid Dread overall, you can go to Patreon, patreon.com/MinnMax with 2 N's. Support us at any tier. You can submit a comment and we'll read it on next week's grand finale for the deepest dive. Also, if you're watching this on YouTube and you say, what is wrong with these maniacs? Look at that running time. I can't sit here and watch all this. That's fine. You can unlock the podcast version of the deepest dive. This one, all the other ones, and a bunch of other exclusive audio by also going to patreon.com/MinnMax with 2 N's. So if you enjoy this type of format, the Game Club format, you can support it or join it over on Patreon. We'd appreciate your help, everybody. We're trying to get up to 2,700 patrons for our new community goal. All right, can we talk about Metroid Dread yet, everybody?
Finally.
Oh, God, there's a bunch of different directions we could take this sucker. I guess, well, let's start kicking off the way we always kick these off, with a little segment we like to play, Janet, called Most Common Comment. We had over 200 comments.
Wow.
Talking about the first half of Metroid Dread, which people were asking if it's a record. Not quite. I think Final Fantasy VII, I think there were some like 240s. For those, I just checked the deepest dive on The Last of Us. That one was like 220, I think, but it's definitely up there. So there is a lot of passion, a lot of enthusiasm for this game. But Janet, I go through every comment, organize them all, and we try to figure out what is the most common comment. This is your chance to guess. What do you think was the most recurring theme? What was the most frequent comment arena submitted?
Do I only get one guess?
Yeah.
Getting lost, like whether we thought it was too hand-holdy.
Very good.
Or not hand-holdy enough.
Very good. I think that's probably number 3 or 4, but that's definitely up there. I just realized this is basically Family Feud. Joe, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I would guess that people have thoughts about the fact that like the instant kill Emmys when they get you and there's the little mini game to escape.
I thought that's what it would be as well, but it is not. Kyle?
I have 2 that I'm going to go for.
No, one guess.
What is this?
Single guess.
It takes a long time to turn into a ball.
Not a single person commented on that.
What? Dude, like everyone's been tweeting that.
Oh, really?
Ben Schwartz like tweeted a picture of his Switch. It's like, I got the ball. Polygon wrote an article today about how everyone is talking about that on Twitter.
I thought you were literally talking about the animation of. Okay, but like actually unlocking the morph ball. Of course, yes, that did come up a couple times.
Wait, hold on. What did you think?
What else could it have been?
I thought
he thought you were talking about the process by which Samus curls into a little ball. That takes too long.
Like what happened to Baby? Like no, we were past that. The deepest dive.
No,
it's canon that it's functionally like a caterpillar turning into a butterfly, where she gets into the cocoon and all her innards get scrambled up, and she completely changes her sort of genetics, and then reassembles to turn back. We all know that's how it works. It's just like a butterfly.
So does that mean if you tap the morph ball and pull it, you just basically just a flow of like Samus guts? Like
stop
Samus. The ball can jump and like you can like propel it with the bomb. So I feel like there's a lot It's durable.
But the guts, the guts can propel it.
You know how to open it though. That's dangerous.
And look, Joe, you're going to regret even mentioning the concept of Samus caterpillar mid-metamorphosis guts evolution, because the internet's going to run with it. It's now some sick, twisted new corner of the internet. You don't know what you've done. The point is, everybody, the most common comment by a mile, and I did not see this coming, were animations. Talking about Samus's animations, both in cutscenes and then also just fluidity in the gameplay, which I think even separately, I think both would have won those. I did not see it coming at all.
I took a little video clip of the first time you encounter a place where it would be nice to turn into a morph ball and turn into, if you lean up against the wall, Samus puts her arm above and like shoots down. And I just like kept sort of repeating that animation. I was like, oh my God, there's so much attention to detail here. This is amazing. I love this.
I noticed that too, especially since if you just stand in front of it and shoot, she just stands and shoots. You have to be like holding forward. And when you hold forward, that's when she puts her hand up and then starts shooting. It's ridiculous.
Is it ridiculous? We're gaming in 2021. Like, I understand the animations are good in this game, but at the same time, is it just like series history? Like, if this was coming in cold, I don't think it'd be seen as ridiculous, but it's just so much baggage about the kind of slow process of some Nintendo series that it seems out of this world.
I think it's divorced from the fact that it's like expectations from previous Metroids and more about just what's necessary for a game like this, right? When you're talking about a 2D exploration platformer game, like what are the odds that the developer has everything so well designed, so streamlined that they have the like development bandwidth to be like, what are some cool little animation touches that we can put in that people may or may not even notice, you know?
Right.
That's why I think it stood out to me.
I think it's also the 2D thing. Like, it's not fair, but when it's a 2D game, you kind of assume that there's going to be like less attention to detail like that and a smaller budget. You know what I mean? But it doesn't feel that way here, at least to me.
Yeah.
I think too, it's like, for me, as far as the animations, it's the fluidity of the movement and how that character has the experience of it, where there are moments in that game where I'm like, wow, I am flying through this area. And it's very much designed to cater to that, in that you're constantly running around, well, not constantly escaping things, because that would be annoying, which I'm glad they kind of struck that balance. But when you end up getting caught and you're just gunning it for who knows what direction, and you're jumping and then as your abilities too start to stack, you can just do so much more. Honestly, it's like a fluidity I haven't felt since I jumped back into Rift Apart, and Ratchet's kind of like doing the rifts and the jumping and the twisting. You can so quickly change direction in this game. I feel like, to Kyle's point, it's like maxing out what this idea could have been.
Yeah. And
it's just surprising to see that they hit kind of the max potential with this concept, at least in terms of kind of like the performance and the visuals and the presentation of it all.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Rich McLaughlin wrote in about loving the fluidity of the animations. It says, also, Samus always turning around by leading with her left side. It feels so natural from an aiming stability standpoint. Oh, that's weird. I guess because the gun's on her right. That's such a fun detail. Or Darkfish Days comments, he says, I like the tug animation as Samus pulls her gun out of some machinery, like the map rooms. It feels like her device only interfaces with the alien tech through brute force. Those little animations.
She slams it in there. She does not mess around.
Well, at this point in her life, she is just sick of messing around. It's just, let's get down to business, everybody.
I actually wonder if that's kind of a Mercury Steam thing, because I feel like Lords of Shadow, I feel like he was really forceful with like inserting crosses into places to do puzzles and stuff like that, you know?
Yeah, it's like Booker with the elevator button in Bioshock Infinite. It was bang, bang, bang every single time.
I saw Kit Ellis from Nintendo posted something about how like an image of Samus going and putting her gun in one of those like terminals, and basically just saying like, this is total confidence, where you're on some alien world and you're just like, I'm going to stick my only means of offense and defense here into this hole and hope something good happens.
Yeah, all Kraid would have to do is just hold on to it from the other side and should be useless. Get out of here. Let's see, this seems like a good place to start. My name is Dan says, kind of lightly sad story. He says, had to get surgery on one of my arms recently because Kraid grabbed it. No. So I'm unable to partake in this deepest dive at the moment. Yeah, that's right. But he says, because he's not able to play, he says, to kick things off, I'm curious, how much of the Metroid series have each of you played? And which game is your favorite? I feel like that would kind of help to set the scene. Joe, where's your Metroid knowledge at?
Well, I've played, at this point, I guess I've played all of them. No, not totally true. I have not played Prime 2 or 3.
Ooh, okay.
But I played like the original Metroid. I played Metroid 2. Like, I barely remember playing that on Game Boy, though. My real knowledge of Metroid 2 comes from having just very recently finished Samus Returns.
Oh, wow, yeah.
And then Super Metroid, I think, is like one of the only perfect games ever made. And then I enjoyed Zero Mission and Fusion, but again, haven't played those since they came out. So it's I guess, like, for me, it's a question of, like, I pretty much replay Super Metroid every few years, and then the other ones sort of, I know about them, but
yeah,
it's so hard to measure up to that game in my mind. So.
And do you pass the Other M test? Do you have your Other M badge, Joe?
No, okay. I did not finish Other M.
Okay.
No. Despite Kyle's constant insistence that I love it.
Yeah, Kyle, come on, man.
I'll defend Other M to a degree, but it's worth playing.
What is that degree?
90%, I guess.
A 90% you would give it. My God, 9 out of 10 from Kyle.
90% like encouragement that you should play it, not a 90% review score. I don't know. Other M mechanically is very good, but narratively is a mess. That's the big problem there.
Right on. And Kyle, I know
to sort of maybe offer my only Other M comment,
yeah.
Samus in Dread feels like the opposite of Other M. Like, they played Other M and were like, okay, let's do 180 degrees that. And that will be our Samus for this game, Which is
amazing that they pulled it off, yeah. But, okay, Kyle, I know you streamed Metroid Prime recently. You're #1 defender of Other M. You did a Max Spoilers recently for Metroid Fusion, which you can find on our YouTube channel or the Patreon-exclusive podcast feed. And then everything else, you're kind of hit and miss?
No, I mean, yeah, it didn't play 1 or 2. Came late to Super Metroid. Was not a staple of my Super Nintendo sort of collection. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. AGM called it the best game of all time when I was in high school, and I tracked down a copy and played it then. Honestly, like, this is a weird answer, but like, my favorite, because like I played it right when it came out and was just like the first one that I played right when it came out and was really excited about it and thought it was really a good use of the Wii motion controls was Metroid Prime 3. I really love Metroid Prime 3. Huh. Yeah. But I mean, yeah, going back and playing Metroid Prime for the first time in the last year or two, it was fantastic. I love Super Metroid, Metroid Fusion, Zero Mission. Samus Returns on 3DS is great too. I really like that game. So yeah, that's where I'm at. Yeah. Metroid Prime 2 is the one mainline one that I haven't touched. I keep waiting for that HD re-release to play that one.
The long-rumored HD re-release.
That may or may not exist.
Who knows?
Is that any closer to happening now?
I don't know. I've heard that it was like...
I feel like it's equally close and equally far away. I mean, if they dropped Dread, what did they announce that, 15 years ago or something?
Right.
Like
2006, yeah.
Meanwhile, the next Prime game, it's like, we're just starting from scratch because it wasn't good. So I don't know when I'm seeing that.
But the trilogy remake, yeah, it's like... Basically, we were hearing whispers about seriously, man, they're loading them on the trucks. There's a convoy coming with that new Prime remake trilogy, and then just nothing.
They're probably all buried in the desert somewhere.
I think they accidentally buried themselves in the desert.
That seems to be what it is. For me, my Metroid history is weird because I feel so connected to that series, and yet when I look back at the games I've actually played, it's a little bit of Prime, a lot of Fusion. I finished Fusion. I talk about Fusion all the time, despite I would talk about it more if I could have a real memory of it, but I played it when it came out on the GBA, and I was a kid. So it's one of those the games that I retain as a kid are really random, and I think only more reinforced if I've replayed them, where I know Mario 64 on the back of my hand because I still play that game, versus Metroid Fusion. I'm the suit was cool, the story was cool, the game was good, and then I see people play it sometimes, and I'm yeah, this is an awesome game. But what was funny about jumping into this is sort of I guess in a way a sparse fan, just because I don't have a lot of history. It was so incredibly what I remember it being, despite not even having the memory. It would just, I was blown away by how much I'm yup, this is absolutely what I expected this game to be in terms of what I remember it being. And yet it still manages to feel fresh, which I feel is such a challenge in a storied franchise like this. And having played more modern, Metroidvanias, and now that that's its own kind of subgenre, I'm I pretty much never liked those games. So I was a little bit afraid of Dread in a sense, because I'm I wonder if this is gonna hit, because I don't really actually like Metroidvanias. I just get lost all the time.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh no, it's checking all the boxes in all the best ways, and I've really been enjoying my time with it.
Oh, right on. Yeah, there's a lot of people that wrote in with that exact sentiment. But like, not really a Metroidvania game, but this game is actually doing it for me. Like another robot here, he says, hard truth I painfully acknowledged a few months ago is that I don't like playing Metroid or Metroidvania, the genre altogether. And if it weren't for the deepest dive, I would not have purchased or even space pirated this game. But here we are. The two things keeping me going are the generous number of save locations and the checkpointing after an Emmy stabs me with its eye horn. Yeah, those eye horns aren't really messing around. Yeah, I'm kind of in that same boat as another bad robot, where I'm not a big Metroidvania guy. And like in high school, I played probably half of Super Metroid, loved Metroid Prime, one of my favorite games of the GameCube, made it all the way through that, despite it making me very nauseous. And then, let's see, played about an hour and a half of Federation Force. So like,
oh yeah,
very scared. I've started Fusion a couple times and haven't really made it that far. And so I am very much the rookie idiot going into this game, wondering how do 2D games work? So that's my role here, I believe.
What is it? What's the meme? Why can't Metroid crawl?
Yeah, that's
you, right?
Yeah, I jumped on GameFAQs to post. Yeah, it turns out it's a really slow animation of her turning into a ball that a lot of people are complaining about. No, I'm enjoying my time with this so far. It is one of those things going through. It's like, oh, it's a nice feeling to jump into a genre that you're not very well immersed in, and just have that feeling of like, I'm doing it. I'm doing the thing that everybody else enjoys. Look at me, I'm making progress in a Metroidvania. Whereas maybe some people have complained about Metroid Dread. It's like, oh, a lot of the power-ups are kind of old and stuff. I feel like we're kind of just going through the motions every once in a while. But it's really fun from my perspective to not really know what's new, what's old, how anything works. Frustrating at times, yes, but at the same time, it's like, yeah, I don't know how to get through that door there. I don't know what that weird block with an arrow means on it. I don't know.
Yeah, and there are some points in the game that I think that maybe, like, I think it onboards people really well.
Yeah.
But there are other times where I feel like it doesn't really, like, okay, here's an old Metroid trick that for everyone who's played it it's not really a trick at all. But if you're new to it, I don't think that it clearly communicates in Dread that like once you get the morph ball and once you get the bombs, you can use that to like get to places that you couldn't really get to before.
Right, by doing like the bomb jumpy thing?
Yeah, by bombing yourself straight up. And they mention that like, oh, a bomb will propel Samus up, but it's like if you didn't do that in Metroid 2, Super Metroid, if you didn't know that was really like a thing that you can rely on to get secrets. It's not, I guess, not part of like the critical path stuff, but
right.
It's important to get to some areas. I did it like twice that I can remember, you know.
Really?
So
just
like,
in a little stretch?
I really wanted to, when I played Super Metroid for the first time, even though I was older, like I was like, I'm not using a walkthrough for this. And the way I learned about that trick, Joe, was watching the attract screen. It shows you how to do it in the attract screen, which is which is weird. But I don't think it's ever been required for progress, right? I could be wrong, but I don't think it's ever been required.
It's not required for progress. But because it's basically anything you can do with that trick, you can do later when you get space jump. But it's like, it's good for getting, you know, I think one of the fundamental things that I love about Metroid, just zooming out a little bit here, is that feeling of when you go into a room and you see a power up, and there are some times when it's like, you know right away, I can't get that, right? Where it's okay, that's there's some weird colored block in front of that thing that I have no idea what it does. And that just means like that's off limits, you need something special. But then there are those times when it's just like just a little bit out of reach, or you can't quite jump there, or maybe you can bomb somewhere else or go around, or like I really like that feeling of like just trying to figure it out. You know? Yeah,
but it's that classic, well, it's the classic reason I think why Breath of the Wild is so beloved by a lot of people, because in Breath of the Wild, there's always a solution. You can always figure out this shrine, right? You're not gated in any way. And I think there's always that thing in this game of like, am I an idiot or do I just need to come back later? Like, okay, there's like the missile upgrade, but it's in the lava. Do I just need to max out my health so that I can survive enough to get over there? Or is it just assumed I'm going to get some sort of lava proof suit coming up later?
Like that's part of what I love about it, is that in Zelda, then it's just like, this is a puzzle in front of me that I need to solve.
Right.
I like that feeling of maybe going outside the boundary of the game a little bit, or outside the rules. I like trying to see, like, is there a way for me to, like, it's clear I'm not supposed to get that energy tank yet, but is there a way for me to bend the rules so I can get that energy tank now?
Right.
And I will sit there and bang my head against a room like that for 15, 20 minutes before I satisfy myself that, like, nope, I just need to get the speed booster.
Yep.
And then I can get it.
There's some good gaming. Joshua Duproy writes in and says, while the game is a little handholdy at times, Adam will reiterate a new ability. Hang on. Adam will reiterate a new abilities functions literally minutes right after the game provides the player with an on-screen tutorial. I've still gotten a kick out of the little things the game doesn't tell you. For example, once you get into the morph ball, if you press the counter button, Samus will do a kickflip counter out of this position, rather than the standard animation with her cannon. Another neat trick is if you lay down bombs while in morph ball, it will one-shot those annoying enemies that suck you towards them. Heck, the game doesn't even tell you about wall jumping. You just have to do it at a certain point.
That's very true. Like, at one point I did it and I'm like, I guess I can use this sort of sometimes. Like, it was very random. I guess I'm kind of like in the opposite camp in terms of, I don't see something and I'm like, okay, how can I like figure this out and get it? I'm like, no, it's the game's going to take me where I need to go. And I think that's the brilliance of Metroid specifically, and why I like it despite not liking a lot of the other Metroidvanias that have come through. And to be clear, there are Metroidvanias I have liked, like Ori and the Blind Forest, the Metroidvania that I absolutely adore. But it's also just such a different kind of Metroidvania because it's very much a platformer. So the only place I feel like I can get a good Metroidvania of this ilk, no shade to Axiom Verge, I actually never played it, is from Metroid. And I feel like as much as I got lost in this game, it does such a good job at somehow funneling you to where you need to go. And if you end up at a dead end, I'm like, it's somewhere in here. And those are the times where I know, okay, it's time to like bang my head against the wall and figure out what this is, because they wouldn't have put me here if I wasn't supposed to be here. They would not have let me be in here. I couldn't take the train over here if it wasn't time to be in here. And what I keep repeating to, my boyfriend just started playing it like today, and he just finished Fusion for the first time like the night before. He's like, I want to check out these old Nintendo games and see like, why do people like these super old games? And he was really into Fusion. And for Dread, like he, is getting lost like you do in any of these games, and they don't have like the same kind of waypoints. Like he started the game and he's like, is there an objective list? And I'm like, oh no, like you're just gonna go. And I keep saying, what I keep repeating is, you just sense it. And like, that's kind of crummy advice, but it's so accurate. Like, just start running around, like you're gonna figure it out. And I like that so much about this, where it sort of caters to both that high and the low end, not to dismiss my own gameplay style, but where you can just go through it and you'll figure it out. You don't necessarily need to be strategic or need to know those like additional skill sets. But I think it's also really fun and kind of old school to be so much catering toward like the idea of, a cheats and secrets kind of section, or a tips like thing for a game that's, essentially a 2D game, where it's like maybe you would expect there wouldn't be as much going on, but they have so much depth despite that. Yeah, and this is why I think this is what separates us, Janet, is you get stuck in that area that seems like a dead end. You're like, they wouldn't put me here. I clearly know there's a way out. Whereas for me, if I get stuck in the dead end, like specifically, it's like the path to Daron. Like the first time you go to Daron, it's like there's just like a little loop, and there's a fire area I can't go through. So in my mind, I'm like, well, I messed up. Somehow I've broken this game. And then I remembered that like, oh, Chris Johnston from the Player One podcast, he tweeted somewhere about a dead end. So I went back and checked his tweets, and it was exactly that spot of like, here is and then people were replying with like a circle, like you need to bomb this area or shoot this area, even though there's, as far as I can tell, no marker there that you can destroy that area. It's just like, they're just regular bricks that there are bricks that you can break generally that don't change until like, because there's like the decrepit bricks that those have like an icon after you like fall through them. But yeah, that was the only thing in this first like half that we had to play that I had to look up, because I'm like, look, could I figure this out? I'm confident I could. Sure. Do I need to do that when the game's already out? I'm like, no, I'm putting the ego aside. I'm just jankily Googling like Darion how to brick something. Like, I don't even know what I searched up. I went to a site I never heard of.
When Google like auto-fills it for you after you just write like DAR, like Metro, it's like, okay, we're all stuck.
Did everybody get stuck in this spot?
I find your Twitter comment really funny, Ben, because I had a similar thing with one of the bosses where I got stuck on, God, what's his name? Big lizard dude?
Kraid.
Kraid.
Yeah.
No, you got it. Big lizard dude.
Big lizard dude, right?
Craig?
Like, we all know who it is.
Yeah.
Did you say Craig or Kraid?
We all say
It
Craig.
doesn't matter.
I like
really
Craig.
I'm like,
I like
I'll be
calling him
honest.
Craig. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't know, some with a K, there's a G there. Like, I saw someone call him King K. Rool, which I think is hilarious. But I got stuck in that boss a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
And then I remember someone tweeting, it might have been Tamor who had tweeted out, like, there are so many bosses where there's one specifically where it'll just loop until you figure out the thing you need to do. And I'm like, is he talking about my life right now? And then I kind of was able to figure out that you need to do the parry on the slash animation. And then I eventually got my way through it. But I too have been like, that's like classic game help where like sometimes people don't want to look up game help, which is totally fair because maybe the fun is figuring it out. But then we all have those things where it's like, oh, I figured it out myself, but I like asked my roommate. It's like, that's game help.
Right.
It's just game help without Googling it.
Oh yeah, like Ross, the Star Wars guy Fund here submitted a comment. He says, I tend to play Metroid games methodically, scouring the map for items each time I get a new upgrade, but this game somehow gets me exactly where it wants me to be, even if I'm actively trying to avoid the next story beat. Which I've had that too, where it's like, well, there's no way this is where I'm supposed to be going, but I'm being a little sneaky. Let's get some upgrades. And like, oh, what's this? Oh, there's a whole new area I'm going to. Okay, you got me, game.
Yeah,
that's how I found. I didn't have to Google how to get to Daron or whatever because like that's how I got there. Is thinking I found a secret somewhere, and it was just like, nope, this is the critical path. Here you go.
Yeah.
You'll walk into a room and a cutscene kicks off, and you're like, oh,
right.
Okay, I'm on the right track. Okay, cool.
Right. Yeah.
Oh, can I share my Twitter and Kraid moment quick?
Yes.
Because
Craig.
I was playing and I had not gotten that far yet, and I follow Tom Happ, the developer of Axiom Verge.
Yeah.
And he just tweeted, I beat Kraid with this many energy tanks and this many missiles. He's a real sponge. And I was so mad because I don't know if this was in the videos beforehand. I had no idea Kraid was even in this
that's a bummer. It was, yeah. I did not include him in like our announcement of the deepest dives. I'm like, I wish I didn't see that myself. So
yeah,
that's a bummer.
I really wish I had known.
Forced me to watch them all. It ruined everything.
Oh, that is true. Yeah, sorry, I did that.
Yeah, but anyway,
I actually beat. I know we're jumping around a little bit, but I actually beat Kraid that way as well. We're just hammering him for a long time, and it was like I saw the counter opportunity, and I was like, oh, I want to try. I just want to see the animation. And then I happened to beat him, and he didn't do that anymore. And I really considered like turning off the game and turning it back on to take my save back a minute, so I could fight him again. But
and then you remember YouTube exists?
Yeah. No, that's like psychopath energy. I can't get with that. Like, I literally was playing this handheld because, like, again, my boyfriend was playing Fusion at the time, and I'm like, you know what? Let me finish up the last part of Dread that I need to do for this episode. So I, like, took it to handheld mode, and that was fine. But then, like, I got to that boss, and I'm like, it's time to, break out the Pro Controller. So I put it on the little crummy kickstand, the little, like, tiny, like, day one kickstand it has. And it's funny because I was thinking of the Fixture as, like, little, the little...
Yeah.
God, what's a good name for that? It's like a holder, the little stand?
Yeah.
I'm like, I could use that right now, but I don't have that, so we're just going to put it on my, like, crummy TV tray. And I'm like, all right, now I'll get it. And I couldn't do it with the Pro Controller either. Yes. I had such a moment... So many moments of bitterness during that boss battle because I just got like stuck at the bottom for the longest where like the little like, I don't even know what that is. Like the little balls were like bouncing around and they kept hitting me and I just couldn't, I'm like, I just can't do it. You want too much of me. You don't have a health meter. I don't know what's after this. Like if there's like a third wave, I'm going to have a mental breakdown. Yeah. And then eventually I figured out the parry and everything. But what was funny about the parry is when I did it, I assumed like it was over. I was like, oh, there's like this going into a cutscene, but it's not. You have to like shoot.
Yeah,
like,
you're actually in
into
control.
His mouth and
it's
stuff
amazing.
a couple times actually. Like by the time I had done it, so like the first time I did it, I was like, we're
Janet,
all
I just
done.
want to call out. I love that. I love that
so
you get into like a cutscene, but you still have like full control of the gun. Oh, that's awesome.
But then I didn't know that, so I just missed my opportunity.
Yeah, I gotta say, like I actually kind of. In general, when it comes to Metroid, 2D Metroid, I think the boss fights represent a weak point for the series. I don't find them particularly fun. Usually I'm just like, try to get overpowered enough where I don't have to think too hard about it. Like even fighting Ridley in Fusion recently, it was just like, I'm just going to throw a million missiles at him and stand in the corner. Yeah. But so far, the two main boss fights that we've done, and the Emmys too, I've liked. Like they've been my favorite Metroid bosses, like period.
So far, yeah.
I like the sort of puzzle solving element of them.
Oh yeah, totally.
I love how familiar Kraid is. Like he uses the same attacks that he uses in Super Metroid. Many of the same ones, like flinging those little claws at you, shooting those platforms, shooting the platforms out of his stomach. The fact that you have to shoot him in the face to get him to open his mouth, and then you can those are all just like old school Super Metroid patterns of his, just like transplanted into a different scenario, which I thought was really cool.
Yeah, Chris Logan writes in and says, Kraid in Super Metroid is one of my favorite boss fights ever, just for the sense of scope. However, you can take him down in like 30 seconds. Not the case this time around, as Kraid took me several attempts. It really gives you the sense that you struggled to take down a giant monster. What a feeling. And Kareem McGee asked the very important question, why do you think Kraid is locked up on this strange planet that seems to be inhabited by some sort of Chozo faction? Is Kraid a creature or a species? He's specifically a creature? It's always Kraid coming back?
As far as I know, Kraid has always been like Ridley. It's a singular entity.
Okay. So it is weird that suddenly now he's just chained up on this other planet, this poor guy.
Yeah, except I thought he was dead also. So there's like, I want to know
what's that about us though. You know what I mean? He's like, wow, that's crazy. How long has it been?
I wonder if there's some weird like cloning stuff or biological experiment kind of stuff going on here that we're dealing with. And this
Metroid?
is like yeah, this is Kraid 2 or something, or maybe Kraid survived, Zebes blowing up or whatever. But
yeah.
I mean, because like another thing that got me thinking about that, those like the things that you beat when you before you get the Omega Cannon, the thing that gives you the
weird eye.
Like, yeah, the
central
weird eye. That's
unit.
Yeah, that's like a mother brain. Here. That's a mother brain thing. Like I don't know if it's mother brain exactly, but it is in that branch of biological research, right?
That's the thing, not knowing the 2D history very well, like fighting those guys, and then it's like, blah, now suddenly it's a cartoon, and I'm like, okay, well, this has to be a throwback thing, because no modern game would have this obnoxious of an eye, but it's like, okay, not quite a throwback, just an homage to the throwback.
I don't know exactly, because like another thing about it that so clearly signals that this is something to do with mother brain is when you get into those rooms, they have the same kind of they have these little guns that shoot angled shots at you,
right?
And they have these little like orange Cheerios flying around at you, right?
Yeah,
and those are the same things in Metroid and Super Metroid that are going around. Like those are the things that are attacking you around Mother Brain when you're fighting her in those games.
So Interada wrote in about that exact connection, saying it might be some sort of homage or something, and then Chris Martin is diving in here saying, I just have to say that I love the fact that the control units for the Emmy are essentially small mother brains. It's a neat callback to Metroid Prime 3, Kyle, where it's revealed that Mother Brain was a Galactic Federation organic supercomputer stolen and repurposed by the space pirates. Even the defenses in the control unit rooms are taken from the old Mother Brain fights in Metroid and Super Metroid. But then Ian Sweetage comments on that and says, you're technically thinking of a different Aurora unit. Mother Brain was created by the Chozo and subsequently betrayed them in helping the space pirates invade Zebes? How do we pronounce this?
I've always said Zebes.
Zebes? That's probably it.
I think you can also jump to this game without knowing any of the story. That's something I noticed as soon as I started it, where like they do a bunch of onboarding, but also like it's Metroid, like, it's fine. You're just there. Like, the fact that they start off and it's like, oh, you have physical amnesia. I'm like, really, man? Like,
I love that they have a name for it.
That was actually my guess for my other guess for the most common.
Oh, really?
Was the phrase physical amnesia.
It took me out completely.
Everyone, I mean, we all just screenshotted it immediately, right? We're like, oh, you mean game design? Okay, yes, thank you. Okay,
it's perfect. Yeah, Rory's.
But I love contextualize it. Why not? Better than just be like, oh, your powers are on. I don't know what to tell you, man.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I was wondering, like, if they ever called it anything before. It's always just, fluke lightning strike. What are you gonna do?
Well, usually there's a little bit more of a reason. Not to say that they didn't have any reason for the story or whatever, but like, because in Fusion, it's like because you got sort of corrupted, like all your stuff's messed up after like, your surgery and stuff. Here it's just like, you're not feeling so good.
Well, I do think it actually is a really smart setup to the game to have like that weird period where she blacked out after the Chozo like seems to be attacking her or doing something to her. I think it's like a really good tease for the mystery of just like, yeah, what did happen in that missing time? What is Adam up to? How aware is he of the situation? Just for him to be like, physical amnesia, what are you going to do? But it's like, man, you probably saw exactly what happened to me in that period, and the fact that you're not telling me, which I think sums up a lot of Samus in this game so far for me. We're like, I love it. I love just how unbelievably cocky she is. She's got a lot of swagger in all these cutscenes. But then it's just like, she should never stop screaming. I'm just like, what do you mean the Emmys were hacked? What are you talking about? How is this allowed? What is going on this planet? Why is Kraid here? She should never stop screaming.
Look, she is too busy keeping her blaster by her side, charging it while it's facing down. That is the most like badass like move I've ever seen in a Metroid game. It's like, yeah, this sucker's charging. I'm not even pointing it at you yet, but it's going to hit you in the face and you're not going to like it. And I'm going to swagger away. I'm going to tilt my head a little bit when you try to shoot stuff at me. She's like almost too badass in this one.
It's amazing. Yeah. And like every cutscene, she just gets more and more cool. Like somebody commented on this video of like, yep, just right when she sees Kraid, she's just immediately blasting him in the mouth. Just like no hesitation at any moment. Right when she sees the Chozo, she's like immediately ready for combat.
Like another other opposite of other M,
right?
Like literally polar opposite.
Yes.
Here's another thing I really appreciate, how those cutscenes, in addition to conveying character for Samus, are also instructional for the player.
Yeah.
Because there's like, if you're fighting Kraid and you're shooting your normal beam at him, or if you're just shooting missiles at him and not hitting him in the mouth, like nothing's happening. They use this cutscene as an opportunity to be like, look how Samus hurts him. She charges up her beam and hits him in the mouth with it.
Yes. Yes.
Like there's a tutorial element to that narrative part.
Yeah.
I like it.
I do like that aspect of it. And like, it's funny when it eventually clicks, because I don't always latch onto it the first time. Like for the first boss battle, I start it up and I'm like, okay, cool. And you have like the sound cues, which like also didn't click for me until like I look over my chat and they're like, you're not hurting him. I'm like, oh, okay. So my bad. But you know, like figuring it out. But then I got like stuck and I'm like, how do I get out of here? I don't know how to get. And then I realized you have to slide underneath. And then thinking back, I'm like, oh, right. The cutscene where you're like staring at its like cage butt. But I'm like, I just thought we were like, I don't know, looking at its weird cage butt. I wasn't thinking about like how to utilize that. But yeah, it definitely has that telegraph thing.
You gotta slide under the cage butt.
Tame the cage butt.
I still don't know how to, when you shoot underneath that, if that does anything. I always get hit. There's some things where I'm like, I'm just going to take damage and we're just going to go and we're going to figure it out. We're edited in post.
Yeah. Alex Britt says, yeah, during the Corpius fight, it's kind of the scorpion invisible guy, when you have to slide under its legs to get away from its butt side, I didn't realize until my last attempt that it stabs you with its tail while you're sliding out. If you parry, you get a cool animation where you get to keep blasting. It was really cool and I almost missed it. What a neat little detail.
Also, it sounds like a dog.
That's what I missed with Kraid, yeah.
I'm sorry, you missed it.
It like barks like a dog.
Hey, really?
Yeah, the scorpion thing.
Oh,
like, am I the only one that like perceives that as like? I'm like, why does it have like? I'm like, what's this? What's wrong with this dog?
Fix it.
Oh, I didn't hear any dog sounds. No.
Pascal Furless says. Well, actually, Derek Donado jumps in before that, saying, this game really turned Samus from one of the coolest protagonists in video games to the coolest by far, just by adding a little cinematic flair. There are some things I don't love, mainly all the talking, unnecessary in a Metroid game, but damn do the cutscenes really do great work making this game special. And then Pascal Furless says, is Samus Aran in Metroid Dread maybe the most badass, confident, and experienced video game character of all time without also being obnoxious and too cool for school, like almost every other character like that, like Dante, Bayonetta, and Snake? I think that's right. Like, I think she's the cockiest silent protagonist of all time in this game, which it turns out is a pretty good combo because you can't get annoyed by them.
Yeah, making sure she shuts up, that's important, I think.
Yes.
Because like that, well, I mean, that was why I did not make it through Metroid Dread.
Other M,
I mean.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I gotta say, I'm sorry, I forgot the commenter, but they said like too much talking.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm a weirdo, but I'm like, I usually like tap through dialogue, but like I'm kind of into Adam's weird voice. It like makes it really creepy and lonely, which is like what I love in Metroid. That's another other M problem, not lonely enough. The fact that there's like a robot voice that's really strange makes me feel uncomfortable and lonely. And for that reason, I let it talk all the way through. Do you think that's an actor, or do you think that's just a computerized voice that they're modifying?
I feel like it's an actor.
I think it's an actor. Yeah. Joseph.
And it sounds like super familiar in a way. Like not like, and I was trying to pinpoint like what robotic voice it reminds me of. It kind of reminds me of a combination of like, oh my God, what Gladys and also Flood from Super Mario Sunshine.
The perfect combo.
Mario.
Yeah, I like
that. Like something, I don't know. I'm like, there's some Flood like energy here. That's sort of, I found compelling. I think the other thing that makes Adam's voice compelling is that it's just foreign enough that you kind of have to try hard to hear what he's saying, but like you can hear it enough that you can hear it. So you sort of like, it makes you pay attention to it.
Yeah.
And obviously there's like the subtitles that you read, and like I read along as like as Adam's talking. But a bit of strangeness makes it like, oh, I have to focus on this right now.
Yeah, Joseph H says, I'm playing with
pulsating globe adds to that too, you know,
Joseph H says, I'm playing with headphones and I can feel Adam's voice in my bones. Yeah, I think that's
see someone
right.
about that.
I get sort of a vibe. I get a vibe off of Adam that reminds me of the boss AI from Peace Walker a little bit, where it's like, because it's based on it's like a synthetic version based on a real character from the Metroid universe, that's something that makes it even a little more unsettling. You know, it's like this sort of weird digital facsimile of a real person that's close enough that you recognize it, but also far enough to feel alien. I don't know. I like that. I also like the balance that they strike with Adam there.
Also, this is secretly a good Halloween game.
Yes.
Because it's horrifying.
Yes.
I'm like, no one told me this thing was scary. Like, there's a clip I had taken out of my like Twitch stream because I streamed my first like impressions of it on Saturday. And I'm just like, I really enjoy, sort of the atmosphere. And I'm just like, ah! And then I'm just like, so I think it has a good like, it's just this, it's up and down in like the most compelling and exciting way. It does a great job, I think, at creating like the dread that is in the title. It's like, Metroid Dread. You're gonna have a good time, but it's gonna be scary.
I think there's gonna be a lot of people going as an Emmy for Halloween, just like at a Halloween party with a loop of like that. Just that stupid like 4-second whistle going endlessly in the corner of the room. Nobody wants to hang out with them. But I had a moment that was very, just speaking of the horror element, like I had a moment that was very, that Ripley in Alien shot where she's going like, yes,
and the alien thing's right there. Right?
Yeah.
I had one of those where I was running away from the speed booster, from the speedy enemy. Yeah. And in the room where they cut in a bunch of little like morph ball sized holes into the wall.
Right.
So I had this moment where I was like, oh God, it's going to find me. It's going to find me. And just as its like I-beam was coming across, I managed to like get into a ball, get into one of those little crannies and turn on my cloaking or whatever. But I had that aliens moment of it just like being, just like an inch away from me and like, it's I-beam scanning all over the place, and I was just like, oh God.
It's such a good, like, classic horror thing. And I was thinking, like, why do I like this so much? It's like, oh, that's right. It's the T-Rex in Jurassic Park, of like the don't move thing. Like the first time it's going right there. Or even, it's the Predator thing of covering in mud and him being right there and just can't see it. It's like this subtly recurring thing in pop culture that's really satisfying every time. This big, scary thing right there, but somehow it doesn't detect you. Because you're
I had
smarter.
A funny moment in that same room too, where like I had what's the name for it? Like I just have fake names for everything. Where you get like the beam that can actually like destroy them. I forgot the name for it.
Mega blaster or whatever, mega cannon.
Like that's conveniently offline the second you use it, even though I falsely fired it like 82 times, but whatever. But like you have to like sort of pierce through the initial layer and then the Stranger Things style looking like layer, and then you can like shoot it. And I was like, usually I have a strategy where I'm like, I'm going to create distance. Like I need enough distance to break it open.
Right.
I don't know if it ever closes after you break it open.
Does anyone know? I haven't seen that yet. No.
I've been too afraid to like test it out because I don't want to waste the run. But usually I'll like break it open and then I'll loop around and I just try to always draw it into like an area where I have enough distance to do whatever charge I need or to get as much damage as I need. So I was standing on like the top platform where there's like all the little nooks and crannies like underneath, and I'm like, cool, I'm waiting, and I was just standing there charging, and I'm like, it's gonna be great because it's gonna come up and I'm gonna shoot it. But I forgot that like it knows exactly where you are, so it just came up behind me and killed me. I was just like, but it was so embarrassing because I had it like, you know, when you turn, it has that cool camera angle where it's sort of like 3D again and utilizing like the assets that it has in the game, the 3D assets, and it looks really awesome. And I'm like, okay, I'm super prepared, and then literally like just unceremoniously killed me.
It's a little bit unpredictable. I've had that situation too. Of like, okay, I've died 1,400 times from this thing. I know it always comes up on this side of the wall, so I'm going to sit there and get ready for it. Oh no, it turns out it's coming up from the other side now. It's like I love those little surprises still.
Hey, I have a question. What do you guys think of when they do catch you?
Yeah.
What do you think about that sequence? Right? Like, do you like the fact that you can get away but usually don't? Do you get frustrated by that? What's your take?
I just assume it's a game over. And so if I manage to get out of it, it's a benefit. Like, I think I've gotten out twice, but I love the pitch that they say of like, basically Adam's like, forget about it. It's statistically an anomaly, I think he says literally 99% chance you're going to die. So every time you do beat it, it's like, I'm a genius, you know? So I think it's worth it for those moments.
I mean, we're in full like Emmy discussion mode now. I'm sure you have some questions about that, Ben. But like, we talked about it even beforehand. I was ready to go into it, and the Emmys just really quickly become obnoxious. Like the woman from Resident Evil 8 from Village. Right. Like you just sort of like know how they work, and it just becomes this obstacle that's annoying. And I am like happy to report that like that is not the case at all. Like I really like engaging with them. I find them genuinely scary. You get killed so quickly that like I don't find it that obnoxious when you die, and you do have that nice moment where you're like, I'm going to try to get out of it. If I don't, it's not the end of the world. But then when you do, it's like, usually, at least for me, I've only done it a few times. The first time I did it, I didn't even know what to do. I was like,
me neither.
I just died again anyway, because, you know. So I was like really prepared to think the Emmy was a bad mechanic, and I'm totally on the other end of it. I love the Emmys. I think they're super scary and cool. I love the boss fight mechanic. I really love getting that weapon and how it makes you feel with the camera shift and the sort of the really intense moment of breaking through and then like, you know, having to get away again and having to charge up. Like that's a really satisfying death, and I'm excited to do it every time I find that weapon again. It doesn't feel repeated.
That is
I'm just like, let's do this again. That was super fun.
That's like the core thrill of the game.
The Emmys are awesome. I really thought I wasn't gonna like them, but I love them. I think they're really cool.
Yeah, with like the original pitch, you know, you gotta wonder. I'd imagine this was in there for the DS version of this game, but like that was probably the core idea. It's like, okay, you're getting hunted, and then you get this weapon, and it is satisfying every time for like, now come at me, bro. Like, where are you? Like going from the hunted to the hunter, it is so satisfying. Just like strut out there. Like, now I want you to make your chirps in my face. Please, I dare you. It's very fun.
Yeah, I'm kind of right there with you, Kyle, where I think it could have easily been, and I know some people feel this way a little bit, where the thing they like about Metroid is being able to just stare at like the one square of the area and like analyze it. And when you're in those Emmy zones, you kind of can't really do that because you're sort of trying to like cover as much ground, like get your bearings and kind of move through. I've gotten better at like existing around them because for a while I wasn't really utilizing the cloak very well. Like I sort of just waited until I needed to use it instead of like being a little bit more on the offensive with like, I'm going to move, I'm going to, you know, use my invisibility and then kind of traverse. But I like that you can break out of it, but that you almost like can't, where it's really difficult to land, because one, I think it gives you something to do instead of just watching yourself die, because I think that can get discouraging. We're like, oh great, like we've all done mandatory stealth, and mandatory stealth usually kind of sucks. But in this, it's like, okay, now at least I have something to do when I get caught. I'm not just gonna sit there. Now I do know some people just sit there and they're like, it's hopeless, and I'm like, that's really depressing. Like I hope that you're at least trying. What's life if you're not, you know, at least going for it? Like, this is fine. It's not
Beautiful.
real. And I've landed it like twice. The other reason I like it on a petty level is now y'all will understand the pain I feel during most parries in games. The difficulty of landing, like how hard it feels to land that. That's how I feel about literally every parry in every game, except for the main parry in this game, because there's a light flash.
Right,
so I'm
it's
like,
very clear.
That's enough for my lizard brain to know it's time to hit X. But if you don't give me like something incredibly obvious, and the enemies like in games that like, oh, fake out, I'm like, I can't, I'm just gonna dodge. I'm just gonna dodge.
I wonder though, speaking of parry, like, you know, Kyle, you talk about like sliding down a room and then getting free and then you didn't know what to do. I want to see if anybody has a video of basically the equivalent of like that Evo moment 37 or whatever, where it's like, parry, parry, parry. I want that, but just somebody getting caught by an Emmy over and over and over and over again, but always deflecting it perfectly. Like, what is that number that you can get up to, you think? Do you think someone's cracked 5 so far on the internet?
I don't know. I saw, I don't know his name. I've talked to him before, but I'm going to, by his handle, Cognac, the guy that made Iconoclasts.
Yeah.
Joachim Sandberg. He shared a really awesome clip of himself barely getting out of that counter. Like, he pulled it off and then, like, barely pulling off that, like, really powerful shot whose name that we forgot. Like, he had a really cool, like, it all came down to the last millisecond on, like 3 things in a row. So that might be what you're looking for. I'll have to see if I can find that.
I wanted to point to something that Kyle said earlier too, about like how it's satisfying every time that you take out those Emmys with that sequence, right?
Yeah.
You get the cannon, you blast them. And as someone who was very recently playing Samus Returns, like, one of the things that didn't resonate about that game for me was the fact that you have 40 Metroids to kill in that game. Like, you're going down the list and you have 40 of these boss fights. So it's just like each one of them just loses weight one after the other until they're just an absolute nuisance. I love how they struck the sweet spot with the Emmys, where they say, like, you only have 7 of these, so you're not going to be doing it a ton. But then also how they make you, like, coexist with it. Like you said, the hunter becomes the hunted. They make you coexist, and you, even though these Emmys don't have lines, they still have different characteristics, and you get to know them a little bit, and they kind of become characters before you have to blast them.
Yeah.
But like Kyle said, it's satisfying every time because it doesn't overdo it, and it builds up to those moments, like, really adeptly.
I was kind of expecting them to have different, more of a personality distinction. Even just like the fact that they're all using the same whistle. It's like, that seems like a pretty easy thing just to shift up exactly what they're sounding like. But like the colors and the design, I guess a little bit in there. And more so, like, I think that
talking about this whistle, I don't know what
you
whistle
don't know what I'm talking about. Am I nuts?
You just have the sound off during this game, Joe. You're just was this like a Spotify?
They're just.
I'm just giving you a hard time.
They literally.
I'm glad you mentioned something, because I've felt the same way this whole time, but I wasn't going to say anything because Hanson seemed really confident. But he was like very much a Samus and Metroid Dread about this whole thing, so I wasn't going to say anything.
Wait,
but I was playing with AirPods. On
what are y'all talking? It goes like.
I think of it as like it's like a piercing. It's a shrill sound. Maybe it's just not like actually a whistle.
I gotta listen for it. Yeah,
it just like loops the same whistle sound.
Whistle.
Oh, well,
that was a pretty good whistle.
Thank you so much.
Did you have like a bird in mind when you did that, or you just
I am an Emmy, so it actually seems a little bit easier for me.
You're a Midwest regional.
How dare you? Somebody wrote in. Hang on, who's this joker? Tactical Dreamer wrote in and said, Hanson, aren't you glad you didn't win one of those Emmy things? They're very scary. Yes, thank you. We were up for a Midwest Regional Emmy for our Oregon Trail documentary and lost, but I'm with you, Tactical Dreamer. I'm glad now. So Saxoclone here, as always, has a good point, where they say that the Emmy zones are just the right size and frequency to put me on edge without wearing out their welcome. And the Emmy AI has managed to surprise me a few times. That's the thing. I think with the original concept here, I was worried about, like, all right, if I'm already struggling with 2D Metroidvanias, the idea of just being chased throughout one does not sound fun. But they are so much smaller than I thought. It's like it's a special occasion where it's like, oh, now I'm in the area that looks bad with high contrast and the film grain on it that I cannot stand. What a treat. But I think it's worth it.
I like the fog. I like that it's kind of like, I don't know, it's like it feels like someone set up a little haunted house in those areas. Like, that's kind of the vibe I get. And the thing about the chases too, because for me, like, I'm still, even though I'm getting better at using like my like little invisibility like situation, I still mostly I'm just gonna chill, and then when you catch me, I'm just gonna start running. I'm just gonna run until you can't get me anymore, which is its own fun. And it reminds me so much of when you play Mario Party and those boards where they like move all the people across, like something comes down the way and everyone has to run. That's what this game is like. It is like those sequences, but with like more elegant traversal and control.
Yes. Yeah, I guess that makes sense.
You also, I mean, it's funny you say fog, because I feel like you basically have From Software fog doors to enter the Emmy areas.
Right.
That, like, weird cuboid kind of thing. It's like, all right, let's go in here. It's going to be tough, but let's do it.
Yeah.
I really like those because they also serve as little mini checkpoints, though, right? So there's like almost a sense of relief. Where, I mean, you enter into the area, but then when you see a door out of it, you're like, oh, good. That means that no matter what, like even if I get caught, I start back here again.
Yeah.
I like that.
And that the film grain and high contrast area for those Emmy zones, it's all worth it when you defeat an Emmy. And then it's basically like a Claritin Clear commercial, like, let's peel this back and make it look normal. It's like, oh my God. It's just so refreshing. Also, like, it's been interesting in those Emmy zones. Sometimes there's really funky stuff happening in the background. Like, oh, they're building robots back there. I want to see what's going on, but I'm so busy running through the Emmy zones normally they don't get to. So actually having that moment of like, oh, now I can actually like soak in new art in the background and not be scared of anything. It's totally worth it.
Ben, did anyone write in to talk about like the atmosphere or the environments like that?
Somebody wrote in about, Nick says, I love the wild storytelling going on in the backgrounds. The room with the giant dead alien creature being autopsied by the robots in the bioresearch lab.
Yeah.
That's amazing stuff.
Very cool.
And if it's the same one that I'm thinking of, like that's the first boss, right? That's being like worked on in the background. That was my read on it, was that they're like repairing it or something.
I thought so, but I wasn't 100% sure. But that was, I passed by it a couple of times. I was like, that guy kind of looks familiar now.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know. It looked way too big to be that guy to me.
I don't know. But also, I'm very glad I caught this, that in the first 20 minutes or so, you actually see that first boss. He's invisible. And he's like climbing in, and he just goes into a little tunnel in the background real quick. But because I'm capturing all the gameplay, I went back and checked. It's like, oh, that's such a cool little Easter egg. I love that kind of like Resident Evil style tease of like, I'll see you later, buddy. It's so fun. Like overall atmosphere, Joe, actually, we didn't get too many comments about like the vibe of the environments, which maybe it's kind of telling. I don't know. What do you think about the tone and the mood so far?
Well, see, because for me, that's actually one of the things. Overall, I'm really enjoying my time with Dread, by the way. But like I said at the beginning, I really like Super Metroid, so it's hard for me to not compare those two things as I'm playing. And like, I think one of the things I love so much about Super Metroid is each of the areas really has a sort of defined vibe in which like the visual tile sets, the enemies, the music all kind of blend together. So like, you can show me a screenshot of Brinstar and I'm like, oh, that's Brinstar. Yeah. That's Norfair. That's Meridia. Each of them are so clearly, but it's like, you can't show me a screenshot of the different areas in Metroid Dread and have me reliably be able to say like, that's this one versus that one.
I mean, maybe not the names. It's a new game, but I think it does a pretty good job so far of like, okay, this is like the kind of fiery area. This is the water area. This is the factory area, I guess is kind of the third one, if you had to describe it.
What was it? I think it's, we've said it a couple times, Dairon, I think. Yeah. Like that's when that at least the way I encountered it was like, that's the first time you kind of go outside, I guess you could say. And I felt like that was like a really cool moment of like when suddenly I was like outside in like a sort of a natural environment. I thought that felt really cool.
I feel like, it's maybe a couple areas where it kind of pops and it's like, oh, suddenly there's like wildlife in water behind you or something like that. It always just feels like this breath of fresh air to like, okay, I'm out of the station for a little bit. Yeah.
Also,
I guess for me, it just didn't feel like that distinct, I guess. But
how,
that's just
and then like, I was going to say Berenia, I think it's how it's pronounced, is when you come in the train and it's like raining really hard and the ocean is really choppy. I was like, this looks awesome. I don't know. There was something about it that felt very Mercury Steam, because like they're just like really good at that sort of stuff. Like the opening level of Lords of Shadow has like awesome rain that's like, it just feels like there's like way too much rain in the best way. So I was instantly in love with that place. I was like, this place is freaking cool. I want to hang out here.
I really love Attack of the Clones.
I agree that they have a few I think that they have memorable screens like that. Like I was as impressed as you were by that screen, Kyle, but I guess I just feel like throughout the course of exploring each area, it just like they don't stand out as, as defined or clearly possessing their own unique characteristics.
Well, how do they compare to not the holiest of holies Super Metroid, but about something like Fusion, Kyle, since you just played it? I mean, how well does that game differentiate the different areas there?
I mean, on the Game Boy Advance, it had more opportunity to use different color palettes. If that makes sense, there's like areas that are more bright and areas that are darker. But that also is like entirely indoors.
Right.
Where this is kind of in and out, like you're in sort of facilities and a little bit outside so far. I wonder if in the second half of the game we'll be outside a lot more.
I hope so.
We'll see.
Yeah. Is it? This is another naive question. Is it always the case that it's kind of like the structure is you go a little bit into the new area and then you use whatever you get there to go back and kind of mop up an older area? Like, I thought it was going to be much more like this area, this area, this here, but it's kind of like bleeding in a funkier structure than I expected here.
That's a Super Metroid trick.
Okay.
Yeah,
it's
to
smart.
Like go a little bit into a new area, you get a thing, you can't go any further in the new area, so you go back. That Super Metroid did that really well.
Okay, gotcha.
Whereas, as opposed to something again like Samus Returns, which is very like this is your playground, and then you move on to the next area and clear out the Metroids there and move on, etc.
Yeah. In terms of the tone, Ben Shively writes in and says, I'm in love with the soundtrack so far. For me, it has a very strong Resident Evil remake vibe to it. The music makes the experience of exploring new areas feel like you are never safe. Yeah, I don't know. The soundtrack seems okay. It hasn't wowed me yet. Like the opening theme, like the title theme is cool. But as somebody who really loves the Metroid Prime soundtrack, it's the same composer. I'm waiting for something that is hitting on that level, but that's a high bar, I understand. Does anybody else have thoughts on the music so far?
I'm a little disappointed they don't give me my like cool fanfare when I get a missile upgrade, and it just gives me a weird like crunchy squeak thing.
Well, it's got to save those beautiful fanfare
they
moments.
withhold those, yeah. Nothing. I mean, not by no means bad. I love the sort of dour, kind of dark, creepy, electronic sort of scary music. But there's nothing that I'm like humming or anything like that after I turn off the game yet.
Well, I think that's also.
Maybe I just haven't spent enough time with it.
And I'm just kind of parroting what Tim Turi used to say, which is that like, in terms of humming stuff from the Metroid series, first one, iconic, Hip Tanaka soundtrack. It's like, well, that's where all our Metroid music comes from. And after that, it's like, Joe, even as a super fan, I mean, are you humming that much stuff from Super Metroid? It's just really good SNES mood music, right?
The Norfair music is pretty badass, but it's hard to hum.
Gotcha.
But I mean, but no, you're, I think as someone who doesn't have a great vocabulary for talking about musical stuff, I guess I think that this is not a series that for me, I'm not like pulling up Metroid soundtracks from any of even Super Metroid and just like listening to them casually.
Right.
For me, it's those things are very wrapped up in the experience of the game itself and not necessarily the music as a standalone thing. I know some people feel differently about it, but that's how I approach it.
Yeah.
I will say, having had like Fusion on in the background for like the entirety of the day.
Yeah.
While my boyfriend played through it. I kind of feel similarly about like Metroid as a whole in terms of soundtrack, but I will say there were a few like musical moments in Fusion where I was like, oh, this is like a really good song in terms of like, this would be I played the piano and I was looking for like Halloween type music, like horror stuff. And I'm like, oh, some Metroid stuff would be really good for that. And it did stand out. But I think one of the reasons that the soundtrack doesn't stand out to me, besides the obvious one of like, maybe it's not that like fire, the other thing is like, I think the sound design takes precedent here. And I think that part of that is in creating that atmosphere and emphasizing, the loneliness, the fog, the machinery of it all. And to that point, like, I love the sound design in this game. It's one of my favorite, like, and I think horror for me always like, or things that are scary always have like an easier time wowing me with the sound design, because so much of delivering that atmosphere, of creating fear, is based in sound. Like, that stuff's scary because of the music and because of the noise behind it. And I think this very much leans into some of that. It's probably one of my favorite sound design experiences this year, next to a couple other maybe horror stuff. And specifically, I want to shout out when you get the morph ball and you go into those little like pinball tunnels.
Right.
The sound of that clicking in is so good. And they have so many great sound design moments. So I want to shout out the sound design in this game because I think it's really phenomenal. But the soundtrack doesn't really stand out in the same way, but the sound design does, because there's two reasons sound design stands out. One, it's really good, and two, it's really bad. And I feel like this leans on the former.
Right. Yeah. And I think it could be a thing of, a year from now, we can go back and listen to the soundtrack of like Daron or whatever. And it's like, oh, okay, I remember that song. Kind of had like that Jaws sounding part in it. Like it's just, maybe it's not sinking in right now, but it could be stickier than we realize. But Lee Lemon wrote in with an odd one where he quoted our savior Dan Reichert saying, quote, "That's one of the best got item sounds in history." And Lee says, I couldn't agree more, Dan. Good Metroid insight from Dan. The classic things sound good. Joe, he's not wrong. It is a very good got item sound.
Well, which got item? Are you talking about the... Yeah, that's great. Yeah, okay. Not the weird chirps that happen when you get a dumb upgrade.
Right. Hey, Joe, take me back in time to when you're over at my house to talk about Columbo for a long time. As you were leaving, as I was pushing you out the door, you said something about like, I'm kind of nervous about starting Dread.
Okay. There might be a better word you can use instead of nervous. I don't know what it is.
Is there some Columbo reference? I can't think of anything. But yeah, Joe, what was that? Like, what were you feeling?
I have a sense of foreboding doom about it.
Yeah, okay. What was going on?
Yeah, did I not explain it then?
I don't know. Maybe I wasn't listening.
Oh, no, I guess.
And real quick, before you go into your explanation, Joe, was this like you were walking out the door and you were like, one more thing, let me tell you about how I feel about Metroid Dread?
That's exactly what it was.
Exactly, yes. I think, for me, I think one of the reasons why I was nervous about this is, I had heard that it was difficult.
Right.
And not that I mind a difficult game, but there's a very specific thing that I personally am looking for when it comes to difficulty in a Metroid game. And that kind of ties into what Kyle was talking about at the beginning of this, which is like, I like it when bosses have patterns that you should learn and, like things that are demanding in that sense. But I also like in Metroid when they kind of give you an out, when they're like, hey, maybe you don't know how to like read all of Kraid's attacks and patterns. So instead of fighting him now, do a pass around the map, get an extra energy tank or two, get an extra missile upgrade or two. And that's sort of, instead of turning the game onto hard mode or easy mode,
right,
the game sort of lets the player determine the challenge they want by like, if you invest time in getting the upgrades, then you're going to make the fights in front of you a little easier, right?
Yeah.
So what had me a little nervous about Dread was like the idea that, having recently played Samus Returns, I was like, I am afraid that the boss fights are going to be like that, like that they're going to be very pattern, skill-oriented fights without necessarily the way for me to, level past them if I want to. And that ended up being the case. You like, unless you're using some sort of sequence break or something, I don't think you can get more than 2 energy tanks for Kraid. I don't think you can get more than probably, I'm trying to think of how many missiles I had. I probably had 60 some missiles when I fought Kraid.
Did you say 60?
Yeah. That's more than I had.
Where are these coming from? I had like 30. like 38. This is some BS.
Just
Hold on,
open
I'm
your
mad
eyes.
now. Let me go. I'm going to run the tape. Go on. Continue.
Yeah, well, you mentioned the sequence break, which seems like it's one of like the biggest headlines after the release of Dread, is everyone being like, hell yeah. It turns out if you get the morph ball before the Kraid fight, which you're typically not supposed to, but if you do it and you can do it, then you kind of have a shortcut and you go in the secret little morph ball hole there on the left, which I was curious, like, what is that doing there? Now it makes total sense. And you can shove your way into his gross belly button and blow him up a lot earlier.
I hate that a lot. I had 39 or less because I have a video after that fight, and I had 39.
I think I had about that level too. So don't worry, Janet. We're on the same page.
Like, where are these 60 coming from? Like, I know there was one, admittedly, there was one in the lava that I'm like,
right.
It's not in the carts today. I don't got the health for it. I could go and then come back. But like, what year are we in? I'm not going to do all that. No.
Yeah. So, I mean, it ultimately for Kraid isn't even super important because he like is spitting out weird balls and fingernails and stuff at you that you can destroy and replenish anyway. So it's not like your supply is super limited there. But anyway, yeah. So that's, I guess, part of my reservation of it is like, I was nervous about starting the game and being in for a very like demanding pattern focused boss fight experience. Which, to be fair, Kraid is the only fight that has felt demanding in that sense for me. Like that first thing I thought was a really well balanced, fun fight. The Emmys are kind of their own things, so they're not, at least the first 4 of them. I'm not going to say they're like easy, but you know what to do. You have a good understanding of the mechanics of those encounters.
Killing them isn't hard. Like the yellow Emmy killed me a lot outside of like the boss fight phase of the Emmy when he was just running around. I mean, there are times where have to sit back and realize I'm dying constantly from these. I mean, the thing probably killed me 12 times at least. I mean, it's just but I think I have very low self-esteem when it comes to 2D gaming and gaming in general. And so I honestly thought that this game was going to be harder with the way people are talking about it. But that said, obviously this is the first half, and I'm sure everyone's like, oh, just wait. Because I don't know if there's just going to be a couple huge choke points later on that are going to be the reason that everyone's screaming about why this is definitively a hard game.
Yeah.
I feel like I beat Donkey Kong Country Returns and Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze.
Right.
It can't be harder than those. So, but hey, I don't know. We'll see.
I feel like the gap between those two games is massive, though. You said Returns, the one where you need Kong to save?
Yeah, I think so.
That's way harder than Tropical Freeze.
Really?
And also Tropical Freeze has like, especially if you're playing modern Tropical Freeze, there's like funky mode if you really want it. Like, I feel like the newer, this is like not related at all, the newer Donkey Kong games, they're challenging, but it's also like, well, how much of a completionist do you want to be? Because you could just finish it and then, except for, I think the final boss gave me some pushback, and I was playing with someone else, so maybe it was a little harder than maybe I remember it, but I feel like nothing's harder than like how brutal like old mechanics and like, you know, it's funny because people were always like, oh yeah, we've gotten soft. I'm like, there's a reason we didn't do that anymore. It sucked. It was terrible. Yeah. Do you remember that era?
Wasn't fun.
It was awful. I look back at it's funny, like again, seeing Fusion replayed in my apartment where it looks so hard. And I'm like, did you know I did this when I was like 9? I had no idea how I did that.
Right.
I don't think I could do that now. So I don't know. Kids are just built different. But as far as Dread, I'm curious what y'all think in terms of how to describe the difficulty, at least in your experience, preferably not using other Metroid games. Because someone tweeted at me and they asked me, how hard is this game on a scale of Kirby to Demon Souls? And I really didn't know where to place it, like in difficulty. Like it's not as hard as like Kena, Bridge of Spirits, but also way different genres.
Right.
But it's a little...
I mean, Kena has
easy
difficulties.
until it's not, right?
I feel like if Kirby is 0 and Dark Souls is 100, I feel like it's like 65 to 70 for me, which is like a really awesome place for me personally. Like I think it's really hitting a good challenge level for me. We'll see how the second half goes, but like I do want to die a little bit. I don't want it to be too much of a cakewalk, you know? And so I'm really happy with where it is, but ask me again next week. We'll see.
It's surprising that there's not a difficulty option in here. I didn't miss it.
It's surprising that there's like not any options. You can't even turn the master volume down.
Wait, really?
Yeah.
I'm like 90% sure that's true. Like I don't have the cartridge like in here now, so I can't check. But I remember looking at it for streaming, and I'm like, there's no options. There's literally no options for anything in this game.
I'm furious that like it also doesn't let you remap any buttons.
That's the huge one.
Which for me is just like why I still, like, I was constantly hitting the wrong button to do that dumb slide. I still hit the wrong button. I just want that slide on a different button. Let me just do it that way.
Yeah, Matt Rogers says, I'm enjoying the game, but struggle at times with the controls. Holding R for missiles, holding L to aim, firing with Y, and doing them all during an intense boss fight has me panicking at times, and just losing all sense of the controls at key moments. Am I just an old gamer now? I'm totally with you, Matt. It's a lot of those, like, okay, this is the moment, okay, to shift to the missile, which I'm doing a lot. I need to hold this, then go over here. What about just like, there are a lot of people saying like, why is it that convoluted way to do a missile? Why isn't it just on A? It turns out, well, we need the Aeon ability later on A to do kind of like the shift thing. But the part I don't understand is the like aim thing on left. Yeah, holding left to aim. Why isn't it just right stick? So you could do it while running around. Am I missing something there? Seems like that'd be better, right?
Well, if you're holding left to aim, that's you locking in. Like the idea is you're not doing that while you're moving, right? Like
yeah.
I mean, holding.
Right, but
if you could aim with the right stick, which by the way, I'm like totally for.
Yeah.
It does seem weird that I have my Switch now. As we're talking about this, I was like, wait, you don't do anything with the right stick, do you?
No.
Maybe you do later.
Yeah,
but like, I mean, that would play differently. Like it would get if you could aim anywhere while you're running, that's getting into like twin stick territory, which would be like a different type of action game, which Metroid could be.
Okay.
I'm not saying it shouldn't be or anything like that.
Sure.
But I think it would play differently.
yeah.
I mean, you can aim while you're running, but it's not good. Like, you know what I mean? Because I have like
subtle. You kind of a little up and down.
yeah, because like that's a lot of, you know, with like, was it Craig, right? Craig, right? Craig,
Yeah.
Craig, whoever.
Craig.
It doesn't
Craig of
matter.
the
He's
Creek,
dead
yeah.
now.
The
It's
Lava
over.
Creek.
Like it's been, you know, died twice. I don't know, 3 times. Who's to say?
Yep.
But in that fight, like, and I do think it's pretty demanding. Like, I think it creates fun gameplay ultimately because you have so many tools. And I am enjoying the gameplay experience, but it is very overwhelming, I think, at the beginning, at least for me, because the button input felt like playing Twister and the memory game all at once. And that's kind of a lot to like deal with. And then I think especially like in those more difficult boss battle sequences, there's a lot going on where you kind of have to do that thing where like your eyes almost completely lose focus and you're just sort of like, you kind of get into this weird zone. It's kind of like Tetris effect style where I'm just like, I'm running and I'm dodging here and I'm shooting here and there's something and I don't even know what I'm doing. And half the time I'm taking damage because I don't know what's going on, but you get through it.
So many people, are writing in though, talking about how smooth the controls are. And I'm sure it's a lot of people who, grew up with the old Metroid games, like Shades 42 here points out that like, I really wish that I could lock things in a diagonal position for like shooting the guys in the ceilings and stuff like that, which is kind of the old school move. But like Logan Ware says, despite having one of the coolest character designs out there, Samus has never really controlled that well. Her games are all about exploration, isolation, and rewarding curiosity, not tight combat. She looks like she's fast and agile, but the only time she's played that way is in the Smash games. I never played the 3DS or Wii games, so this may not be new, but this is the first time a developer has resolved this strange cognitive dissonance for me by making Samus move and fight the way she looks like she should.
I will say Other M plays very well and has like probably still my favorite counter mechanic. But they did state specifically that they hadn't played any of the Wii ones.
Right.
Like Other M, it's a Team Ninja game. Like she moves really well in that game, but like I feel like the secret here is that dash, that sort of crouched dash. Like that just lets you move around so smoothly and like get through these like what looks like a complicated area very quickly,
Yeah. Still, I'm with you that remapping the controls would be nice.
I would like to remap the controls. I take issue with that comment saying that Samus doesn't control well in previous games, but all that aside, even without comparing it to other Metroid games, I just think like it is rare that I pick up a game and in the first 5 minutes just have that feeling of like, oh, this feels good.
Yeah.
And regardless of, like some minor tweaks I would make to the button layout, I'm sure eventually those make more sense as you get more upgrades anyway. But like all of that aside, like I think that, that commenter is totally right. Like it just feels like Samus just feels amazing to control. She feels powerful, responsive in a way that like I never feel like it's the game's fault if I get caught by an Emmy or eat a bullet when I'm not supposed to, or, when I don't want to or something. Like it always feels that's on me and my response and not some deficit in the game.
Totally, especially that Kraid fight.
I mean, the frame rate takes you a long way with that. Like getting that really smooth frame rate really makes it controlled really well. I remember playing like Link Between Worlds for the first time and I was like, why does this feel so much better than any Zelda game? And I was like, and then it was like, oh, it's the frame rate. It's because it's a 60 FPS game,
And then you play Link's Awakening at 21 frames per second, and it really sunk on. Patty Cake says, I love that Mercury Steam committed to making the game run at a smooth 60. I have not experienced a single frame drop throughout my playthrough so far. The smooth FPS really goes well with Samus's great animations. I've had a couple sections where it bogged down a little bit.
Literally all of us started nodding immediately.
Yeah.
Is it the elevator animation?
Well, definitely those loading screens. Yeah, those are all
the loading screens are totally forgivable though. That's like, hey, I'm not playing. It doesn't matter. It's happened to me a few times, like actually in rooms with enemies around and stuff. And that's a little more frustrating.
Yeah. Janet, were you playing on an OLED? Is that sitting on your desk there?
No, just regular Switch.
Oh, it's just a white Joy-Con Switch?
No, it's the Animal Crossing one.
Okay.
The back's white.
It looked like that.
No, but I did consider because I went into handhelds for this, and I was like, man, do I want this OLED? But then I'm like, nah, I don't think so. Because if it was easier to like maybe trade in, because I have a day one Switch and an Animal Crossing Switch.
Sure.
If I could maybe easily do a trade in, but like the OLED, if you didn't pre-order it, you kind of have to hunt for it. So I'm like, I don't want to just buy it straight up. Like, I'm not interested in doing that. So
yeah,
probably not.
Okay. Austin
Is
Nicholson.
anyone playing on the OLED?
I'm not even playing handheld. Maybe because I'm capturing, but is everybody?
I did for the first hour. I was like, well, I'm going to take this all in and really get the opening in. So I played that on a TV. But I mean, I love Switch Lite. Like the Switch Lite is my favorite. So like that's mostly where I'm playing, especially now with AirPods that you can connect. Like it's perfect. That's my preferred way to play.
Huh. We had Xavier Perez say, if anyone is playing handheld, have you had issues with the controls? I understand the game is hard and meant to be hard, but playing handheld, the controls are so difficult that it actually hurts my hands after I've been playing for a while.
Welcome to every day of my life, all the time. I have like plenty of hand pain from gaming because
Really?
I like play a lot and I write a lot, like historically just in my career. It's gotten a lot better now that I don't write quite as much, because when I used to do guides, you can imagine how many words the guide of a game is.
Oh God, yeah.
Yeah, that's a lot of words and a lot of gaming. So it's definitely better now. But yeah, I mean, I would recommend, like, if that's really a problem, just don't do it that way. You know, even if you just do the Pro Controller and have it on a little stand or something, like, ever feeling discomfort, that's what I recommend doing. And personally, like, I thought handheld was comfortable and fine until I had to do a boss battle where it's like a little bit twitchier and there's a lot going on and it's like a elongated combat sequence. Because I feel like for the most part, even when you're fighting in Metroid, the enemies are like pretty far spread out. You kind of see them ahead of time. You can sort of plan as you get more, you know, that one ability where you can like shoot and it kind of goes through the wall. You can kind of like cheese some things.
Right.
So I think that kind of helps a lot. And then, yeah, I guess if it's ongoing, obviously, like, talk to someone about it, because you shouldn't have hand discomfort. But for me, I also do, like, a lot of hand stretches and things, because, like, I'm always worried that I'm going to get carpal tunnel. So, like, I'll look up, like, Aaron Mott's hand yoga or whatever and do, like, a 10-minute stretch. But that's, like, next level stuff. Like, if you're not a professional, if you're not doing this for a career, I feel like it probably shouldn't be that deep. But, yeah.
Robert submits a comment over on Patreon and says, I'm really not enjoying the Emmy system. With the game being 2D, it feels like it's really easy to get cornered and caught, even with the stealth activated. Also, the way you kill them is already kind of getting old. I keep having to run around in circles, trying to find a long enough flat stretch to give myself the time to melt their face cover. And even like Ben Reeves was talking about how he had a really tough time with the fourth Emmy because he couldn't find like a home stretch. But I was like, oh, it didn't take me that long. It's kind of like right there. It wasn't that bad. But yeah, so he's also feeling a little bit cornered. It's easy to get caught, I guess, in the 2D. And yeah, I guess there's some areas where it's kind of tough to jump over them.
I think that would be a bigger problem if there were more at stake. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, because of the way the checkpoints work, it's like you're in. I could be wrong about this, but I think they kind of close you in an area with the Emmy. Like there's obviously the whole Emmy zone, but I think they kind of limit you to one arena.
Oh, really?
Once you get the Omega Cannon.
Huh. Okay. I guess I haven't explored that much.
Yeah. But anyway, yeah, I don't know. I guess it seems like for the fourth one, I had there was like a sort of an S-shaped pattern that I would just like keep cycling through of several sort of. I mean, they don't necessarily give you airplane runways that you can like shoot at them from, you know, a mile away.
Right.
But it's enough space to you know, blow off the faceplate. Yeah,
I agree that I think inherently, like, the way you kill them is repetitive, because it is quite literally, at least for these first four, the same thing. The one change is that, like, now it has a faceplate, and like that was like the only change.
Right.
Yeah, and I think that, like, it is like sort of this like epic moment, but at the same time, it's like, this is kind of just a chore that I have to do. Like, admittedly, I'm not obsessed with doing it. Like, I think it is, the animation stuff is cool. I like the little like turn to the 3D, but I'm not like, I'm looking forward to the thing being dead more so than the process of killing it, because it is very formulaic. It's like, okay, let me get a little stretch of an area, and then I load up. And then for me, I keep having the problem where when I hold down to do the actual blast, I forget to just let go of Y, and I let go of Y and the trigger at the same time.
Yes, I've had that a lot.
And then it doesn't work, and then I just have to do it again. And it's one of those things where I think the thing, at least for me, that makes it wear a little bit old, not so much that I might like, write in about it, but like enough that I do notice it, is that I know exactly what I needed to do. I know I can do it. I've done it before, and yet I have to keep doing it again. It's like, I passed this test already. Why are we still? So I think I do feel that a little bit. As far as getting caught, I think just switching up your strategy can go a long way. Because for me, I feel like with the faster one, I was getting caught more than before. And I was realizing that because I feel like at first they design it where they move slowly because you don't really have a big tool set. But once you get the ability to cloak yourself and make yourself invisible, that's when the faster one's there. So it kind of fits. And for me, I wasn't really utilizing the invisibility as well as I could have been.
Totally.
And I was sort of waiting I was like in these processes where I'm like, okay, let me wait for it to be totally out of the room. And then I'll like walk around. And like once I kind of started like taking a little bit more ownership of like my adventure in the context of being hunted by this thing, I was able to kind of just do a little bit more. So for me, that's what's made it interesting, or made it feel like it's more than just me getting caught by this thing a million times over.
Right, yeah. Kevin McCauley says, hey gang, Dark Souls Pro here. I'm dying more times than Dark Souls. I feel like my brain needs to calibrate every 10 minutes. I'll die 100 times when I enter an enemy zone before I remember, oh right, I gotta play a stealth game now. It's not a game I can play while sleepy. Well, wake up, Kevin. Come on, there's an enemy in the room. Nick says, the amount of insta-kill and fail states feels surprisingly un-Nintendo. I can't remember the last Nintendo game where I saw this many game over screens.
It's T for Teen.
Donkey Kong Country.
Yeah, honestly, Donkey Kong Country. It's T for Teen.
I think we're learning that, Kyle, people haven't played Donkey Kong enough, which we already kind of knew that, but
no, that game is brutal.
Yeah, play that also, by the way. Fantastic games.
But looking back on this, and it says, God, what does it say? Because of like the animated blood, the violence and the fantasy violence is why it's got the T for Teen ESRB rating. Yeah. But I was surprised to like looking back on like Fusion, for instance, and like let me know. Do y'all know if there's other T for Teen rated Metroid games?
That's a good question.
I imagine Prime, because Prime feels kind of like.
I guess that there's enough shooting in it.
I know, like
not
Twilight
to say
Princess.
that means why it's harder, but I just feel like. I don't know. I was just surprised to notice that compared to like Fusion.
Yeah, Fusion's E. Yeah. I don't know.
Like I know like Twilight Princess was a T, which was kind of a big deal at the time. Metroid Prime is a T for Teen.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're thinking Metroid specifically, not just Nintendo games.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if it's...
I was just thinking of like comparable Nintendo,
Yeah, like franchises that are usually E for everyone that are now T for Teen, but...
Yeah, it's...
I mean, I don't think that's why it's necessarily harder, but I kind of feel like this is, in a way, I think it's for a more... It's funny to say mature audience, because if you're like 13, you're not necessarily mature, but I do feel like there are not kids it's not a kid intended game, unlike a lot of other Nintendo games that are all ages or whatever.
I do think this game is going to be like, the same way when we did the deepest dive on Super Mario 64, a lot of people wrote in and talked about how scary that game was as a kid. Even if you're like 13 playing this game, I feel like this is going to be a big scarring game for a lot of people is, oh my God, those Emmys kill you so fast. Seeing Samus get her face punched in by this rod from No Country for Old Men again and again and again. Like, I think people are going to be scared of this game. Mark my words, Janet, 10 years from now, it'll be a whole meme about being like, oh, that taught me what fear is. Oh, is that what memes sound like? I don't know.
And the sound that the sharp thing makes, that just like, that sticks with me.
It's brutal. Yeah. Hugo H2P says, am I the only one who thinks the Emmy's insta-kill animation lacks impact? That seems about as impactful as you can get, but hey, hear him out. He says, the chases are so intense. The chases are so intense and the animation has, just like GoldenEye death screen. And the animation...
Django Fett style, just head right off.
Yep.
Has a nice build-up and tension, especially if you're trying to counter it, but the actual piercing of Samus has no punch and fades to black too quickly. I don't know. I'm seeing it so much, I like the speed. If anything, it could be a little bit faster. He says, on the White Emmy, I love the game design push and pull that happens. I was lost until I realized to proceed I needed to raise the water platforms, and did so by standing still in the area that there's a killer robot chasing you. What a beautifully devilish game design decision, making you fight your own flee instinct. It really adds to that encounter's tension. Same thing with the melting and blasting off the Emmy for good.
I also want to mention real quick with that quick kill animation is when you miss the counter, the second counter, Samus like kicks him in the shoulder, and it's both like funny and also like, well, I missed it. She's just gonna struggle. And let's go ahead and put the switch down. We'll wait out this loading screen.
Yeah, the water raising and lowering, like at times it's like a pixel junk shooter game in here. Is that a recurring 2D Metroid thing? Is kind of like adjusting water levels, or is that pretty unique here?
Well, you only raise it, right? There's no puzzle necessarily, right? You just raise it once and then that's it. Because like
there's some
the first
where you
time
have
I
to
encountered those.
There's some where you have to like punch out a block and then it kind of like drains an area, I believe.
Okay, maybe I'm misremembering. Yeah, but like also like those lava inputs that Samus slams her hand into.
Yeah.
When the first time I got one of those, I was like, I'm gonna have to go back and like flip this the other way, aren't I? But then I realized like once you do that, it's like it's done, which I loved. It was like, it's not a puzzle. I gotta find this, and that's it. That's the whole puzzle. And I felt like the water was kind of similar. Like once you do it once, like you're done. You know?
Yeah. I mean, it's telling that at this point the thermal fuel flow has been redirected. I'm still not 100% confident what that means. I just know if I do this, then I can go to some new areas, but I don't really understand what's changing.
I always thought of it as you just follow it, kind of.
Right.
Except for that one time you maybe don't. Because like at one point I'm like, I don't know where I'm going anymore, but I'm like, yeah, like this is now my glowing direction line. Like I feel like I'm at an airport when I'm like changing those up. I'm like, this is where I go now.
Right. And you can see on the map, like, okay, this door is open compared to closed before, all that fun stuff.
Is anyone using placing markers on the map? Because I'm like, why'd you even give me these? I don't know what I'm doing.
I've done a couple, but at the same time, like not knowing the power-ups that well, it's like, okay, I can mark it for yellow, but I don't know what is yellow now in my mind for the future power-up. So I wish I had a better catalog of like, oh, blue is my morph ball. Come back to this point marker or something like that. But I don't really know what's coming up. So
it's less about color coding it like that for you, because one thing that is unique about this Metroid, though, I mean, I guess Samus Returns does this to some degree, but this map is pretty comprehensive in ways that previous ones weren't.
Yeah.
Where it like shows you it shows you the doors. It shows you the things you need to open those doors. When you bomb the environment and find a speed block, then it just marks on your map, there's a speed block here.
Right.
So like in previous Metroid games, that's why you would want a marker, is to be like, the map will show you a dot that is a sign to you that, hey, there's a thing in this room. And as a player, you want a marker to say like, I didn't get this dot, I need to come back here later. But now you can just look at the map and see like, oh, I have speed booster, there's a speed block in this room, I can go there now. So ultimately what I have used the markers for are really just reminders to myself of like, okay, I know that this is the next place that I'm supposed to go. So I'm going to put a marker there, and now I'm going to go do a sweep of the map.
Right.
Try and get some more missile upgrades, some energy tanks or whatever. And then if I put my Switch down and come back to it the next day, I can be like, okay, this is where I need to be going next.
Yeah, that is helpful.
Because the game doesn't have objective markers. So that's basically what I use them for.
Yeah. Juan M. submits a comment over on Patreon and says, I really appreciate the ability to highlight similar objects in the map so that after unlocking the wave beam, you could easily find all the wave beam doors you passed by. I hadn't seen that. I guess I hadn't dug into that specific feature of like, show me all of these, but that seems amazing. That seems crucial for the second half of the game. Yep. White Mech says the map is kind of cluttered and hard to read at first. There's a lot going on there. That's for sure. Yeah.
Nick, I mean, the fact that it like shows you where you got items that you've already picked up is interesting, but it does, I think, make it a little dense to a fault.
Right.
Where I do get a little overwhelmed when I look at it.
Yeah. Nick from Atlanta writes in and says, I've been extremely frustrated by the fog of war mechanic that shows you where you've been. They made areas larger without increasing the uncovering radius for where Samus has been in a room. The fact that walking through a doorway doesn't uncover the fog on the top side, or that I have to run back through a hallway just to jump against the ceiling is so annoying. Yes, I have a problem with compulsion. Why do you ask?
I am a sucker for that. I'm jumping to try to fill in the map.
Yuck.
Like that's a very much like a Symphony of the Night thing. Like to just the way you get 100% in that game is like there's one area where you have to like make sure you turn into a bat and go right up into the very corner just to fill it in. I'm a sucker for it. I want to fill it all the way in.
Oh God, that's so overwhelming.
I really hate that it's like that, especially because so much stuff is like really unreachable at first. So, and I kind of forgot that it did that until like I remember hearing it on like someone else's like podcast, I think on Kind of Funnies, because I had jumped into that while they were recording for our Far Cry thing, and they mentioned that, and then I blocked it out of my memory,
right?
And then I remembered it, and I was like, oh god, now I kind of want to do this, but then at the same time, I'm like, you know what? Nintendo doesn't care enough to put achievements into this. Why am I 100% for
no.
what?
Yeah.
For what? Like, and you can argue it's always for nothing or always for the love or the fun and blah blah.
But it's beyond 100%.
I need that serotonin of something like popping off here, and if you're not going to give me that, no.
Well, I mean,
it's just going to be foggy.
You can get the 100% without clearing all the fog, right? It's just like that little idea of you
but
want the map.
It feels like it feels wrong. You know what I mean? Because then again, what am I doing this for? Like, you know, and you can argue that for any time we sit down and play these games. Like, what's going on here? But yeah.
Christian Jimenez says, I like the hint system of having rooms flash when there's something there, even though those hints, even with those hints, some of those collectibles are well hidden. Yeah, I've definitely had situations where I'm just like, it's flashing right here. It feels like a Resident Evil 2 remake or something. Like, I'm in the room. I don't know where else I'm supposed to be looking here. I guess I need another power up, or maybe not. I don't know.
But the big tip there, Hanson, is for someone who hasn't played a ton of Metroid, is just bomb everything.
Just bomb and shoot everything.
Bomb all the walls, bomb everything on the floor, shoot missiles into the ceiling. Like use the explosive.
Another thing.
Yeah.
Another thing for people who are hunting for those upgrades is that, like, when you see the flashing stuff, don't just pay attention to the part of the map that you can see that's flashing.
Right.
There's a square, and then the parts of the map you can see are flashing within it. Because there have been a couple points when it's like I've shot missiles at every platform and wall in the area that I thought I could. And what I actually needed to do, like to Kyle's point, is bomb the floor a little further off to the side, and that creates a secret that uncovers the secret alcove that is technically within that box.
Yes,
but it just was not readily apparent.
That's a good tip for sure.
There have been 2 things like that so far that I've run into. So
this person, my dog is hip, seems right up your alley, Joe, because you also think your dogs are hip. They say,
hip.
I know people. That's how I like to describe most dogs, is hip. Anyways, I know people will say I'm crazy, but I'm using a guide and I love it. It's just a picture of the map with numbers on it showing which area to go to next. Too often in these types of games, I stop playing because I get lost. I wish general wayfinding was an accessibility option in the game. Maybe it's already on the map, but I'm missing it. I am colorblind. That is interesting. I can't imagine going through a Metroid game just glued to a guide, but if you're loving it, my dog is hip, we cannot judge.
Have y'all ever done a game with a guide from start to finish?
I don't know about fully glued. Well, actually, there's probably been some adventure games. Like Day of the Tentacle was pretty close to that, actually, when I played that back in the day, because it was such a pain in the ass.
And proper farm game, Dark Souls 2, at about the 60% point, I started using a guide, which is really uncharacteristic for me. But I was like, I got to see what the big deal is with this series,
And now you love them.
For Final Fantasy games, I would regularly buy Final Fantasy, the disc and the guide, at the same purchase.
Ooh, that's bold, Joe.
I can't remember what the last game I've done it for is. It's probably been a while from a full start to finish, but I've definitely done that. I know some people definitely think it's weird, especially because it does get to that point where it's you got the iPad and the laptop and you're just staring one to one.
That's where it just feels gross.
It's a little bit this is kind of weird, but it can be a great way to easily feel like it's an easier way just to get through a game if it's something you've been struggling with, or if there's something that you want 100%. And again, even the most purist of purists will say, I've never used, every person that's played games has used some form of guide or some form of help, whether it was your sibling or a tweet, or you Googled it, or you scrubbed a YouTube video, or, everyone's done it. So, I'm all for it if that makes it more fun for you, / if you're this is the only way I'm going to play this thing, then I think it's better than not experiencing it at all.
Kevin Robinson has a real humdinger. This is one of those things in the game that I took a note about because I'm like, what are these? What is happening here? And then I kind of forgot about. But Kevin Robinson writes in and says, I wouldn't have thought to mention this if someone didn't ask in the Discord channel, which, by the way, if you support us on Patreon to get access to the Discord, where there's a whole community that's devoted to the deepest dive of Metroid Dread. So we say we're the best, most thorough discussion about the game in these discussions, but that is a whole other layer. This is just tip of the iceberg because people are going deep and it's really fun. And they're always spoiler texting. What's that called? spoiler shielding, all things. Spoiler tag, thank you. The point is, Kevin Robinson says, the way the design team uses the blue butterflies to attract your attention on the way to progress feels like a great evolution of the paint the path forward with a certain eye-catching color that came about with games like Uncharted. Is that what those butterflies are? Is that just the indicator of this is critical path?
I wondered about that.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I've noticed them too, but I wasn't sure if that's what they... You'd think that if that's what they did, the game would tell you that.
Well, I kind of like that it didn't, though, that we're all just trying to piece it together.
Well, yeah, but
then different than the little enemies that hurt you, because there's also like a small.
That's what's confusing. Yeah, one of them you can shoot and get health back, and one of them you can't.
Whenever I see any, I just start blasting.
Oh yeah,
I don't know what this is for.
No, Ben, they are no good if you do not know what purpose they serve. If you can't look at them,
I disagree.
If you can't look at them and say like, oh, it's those blue things. That's where I'm supposed to go.
It's an unconscious level. It's like you're seeing it.
Long-standing disconnect, I think, between maybe Hanson and you and me and Joe. Like, I'm mystery is good. Like, I don't need to know what it is. I like it to be sort of interesting and strange. But I know you like specifics.
No, that's not even it.
Works.
It's not even about
I get what you're saying,
I'm
Joe.
just saying, what point does it serve?
I'm telling you what point it serves, Joe. It's not intriguing.
We're
you're
like
both
10 seconds away from her sister was a witch. And it was her sister.
You're both wrong.
She came down in a bubble, bro.
It serves the point, Joe, of it's an unconscious thing of like, that's interesting. I guess I'll go that way. You know, it's just like if you're wandering through a city.
The only way to really know how, and I'm guessing if they designed it, they know how effective or not effective it is. So I think if that was their intention and they play tested for had a control group and then a group with the butterflies and then whatever the hell else in there, and then figured out that people are unconsciously registering it.
So that's working.
And that's fine. But also, like, you can just go Tsushima and say that the winds are going to appear. I mean, it would be weird if they said if you could just swipe on the screen and butterflies would appear in Metroid Dread. That'd be a little bit odd, but I don't like that they look the same as the thing that kills me.
It's not that different.
I just shoot everything that I see.
Yeah. Do you guys have a favorite creepy crawly? My creepies! Do you have anything, Kyle, for a monster?
I mean, I like those. They kind of look like the reanimators from Dead Space. They have like the weird bat wings and they fly.
The thing that shoots a bunch of stuff out at you?
They did a swoop?
No, they're the ones that are like the most counterable.
Oh, the tutorial counter thing.
Yeah, like those guys, I just like have a lot of fun fighting them because they're easy to counter and you get a lot of bonus upgrades and stuff like that.
Right.
But like their design isn't really that super like, oh, look at that. I want to see what the concept art for that thing looks like. Mostly I just like fighting them. You know?
Yeah.
Because it's fun to take them out with a counter.
I like the big like, they're kind of globes or something. They're these big circular things that are on legs that just have this giant fire blast that they shoot from a pretty far distance.
It's not the like Mega Man looking metallic one with the fire on both sides, because I don't like him. Do you know what I'm talking about?
No. Yeah, it's not that robot that. Yeah. It's not the robot that pounds. There are two of these things like going up to Kraid, where it's they're more organic looking things, but they just sort of. Oh, and there's also I've run into two of these things now. There's some weird like pretty rough robot. Like I
was thinking that robot too with the big eye.
Yeah, that like pounds the ground and sends.
I like love to hate that creature. Like I killed it the first time I saw it because I'm like, yeah, like, and I like that they set up that area too where you see that it's like just like sleeping. It's not literally sleeping because it's not organic, but whatever. Y'all get the vibes. It's like sleeping in the background, and then when you power everything on, it like awakens. Like I think that's really fun. So I like that one, but then it also was like a pain in the butt to kill. So I'm like, I don't know if I need that. I'm a fan of the weird eye energy that you absorb.
Yeah.
Every time Samus walks up to that and like puts her hand into the weird eye goo, I'm like, oh, that's so gross. I love that. And I also have a fondness for the enemy that's like latched to the door. Just because I forgot that was a thing in Metroid. Because again, it's been so many years, like probably like 10 to 15 years since I've really dug into a Metroid game. And when I first saw it, I was like, what's going on here? Like, what do I do? It's not like coming out at me. And then eventually it did. And then I also learned that you can counter it too. And kill it really easily. Now, I will say I wasn't a fan of having to kill it each time I died in that boss battle. I thought that was BS. I hate what they do with bosses in this game where I have to walk across 2 rooms. It's stupid, and I hate it. Every game, it should be illegal to make it so that I gotta walk through these 2 rooms. What's gonna happen? I can get hit, I fall in the lava pit. Now I'm just gonna kill myself because what's the point of doing it? I can't stand that.
The Kraid one, it's like a little bit of a trek.
You do need the opportunity to go back and explore, though. They got to give you that little window.
Yeah,
right?
Sure, but like, how big of a window do I need, though? And couldn't that enemy have been killed at the door? Like, why do I have to kill it each time on the way inside?
It's only for that first boss, right? Because the second one, it's like in Kraid you start after, and I was low on health, so I was actually going back trying to find one of those juicy door slugs to try and load up on health. I was like, I guess he's gone.
For Kraid, you start in it's 2 rooms. It's 1 room over. You start in a room that has a little lava pit.
Yes.
It's just small enough that you never miss it, except the one time you do and you fall in, and it's BS. And then you have to go down the little hole. I feel very passionately about this. I'm so mad.
The Chun writes in, speaking of your beautiful brain buddies, Janet, says, I'm 3 Emmys down and getting a bad feeling that the blue brains we're harvesting the unique energy from are the prisoners themselves. Adam lays it on pretty thick with, quote, these existential threats cannot be sanctioned, and you are faced with overwhelming power. Accept your helplessness. Frankly, I think we're heading straight for a are we the baddies moment here. Adam, I'm still confused, not knowing the full history of Adam here, like, how much does Samus trust Adam? He's an AI, but used to be her commanding officer or whatever.
I think it's named after the commanding officer. It's not like it's not like they took Adam's brain and stuck it in a computer. I think it's almost a coincidence. I think.
Okay.
And this is embarrassing, but because I just played Fusion. But I don't remember if he's like secretly a bad guy or not. I think he's genuinely helpful.
Okay, so I shouldn't be as skeptical about him as I am, but that's definitely the tone I have. When he's like, oh, these Emmys, worship at the altar of the Emmys, they're unbeatable. It's like, okay, buddy, you got to cool it here.
Yeah, but I mean, there's also the chance, who knows what happened to Adam in that time that Samus was offline too at the beginning.
Right, that's true. That is true. Empiric Unicorn.
Playing solitaire, just waiting around.
Yeah. Empiric Unicorn says, hey, divers of the deep. Well, that's us. Loving the gameplay, not loving Samus being called lady by Adam. If you had an AI that was based on someone, why not get rid of the most condescending personality traits that you won't have to be reminded of that person's worst qualities every day? Is that an Other M thing?
Like that's another M thing.
Oh, God.
It is weird that came forward. I think it's in Fusion, too.
Oh, really?
Like, I think it was in Fusion first, and then Other M contextualizes it in a way that's really not satisfying at all.
Yeah.
But Samus seems to like it, so whatever.
I feel like, like Adam kind of sucks a little bit. And I feel like that adds a bit of intrigue.
Right.
Not that I need, like, and I didn't play Other M, but the whole, like, Adam just, like, negging her into like, existence. But... yeah, like, I feel like it had just, like, a little bit of that, which was like, it's fine. Like, I don't know. Like, I feel like, to be honest, if Adam called, I would, like, leave Adam on red. You know what I mean? Okay. Like, I know Samus has to take it for story purposes. I would put that straight to voicemail. Like, I would just put my phone on Do Not Disturb and just be like, I get it. You got to find your way out of here.
And
like,
that's fine.
It is what it is.
Wriggles writes in and says, when I first played Metroid Fusion, I assumed the AI Adam would sound like a human over an intercom. Actually, hearing Adam speak in Metroid Dread made me realize something. Samus naming her AI Adam gave her some sort of comfort as he constantly faces these monstrous creations in labs and ruins. Even though their voice is robotic, Adam is a way for Samus to deal with her solitary adventures and loneliness. That is a beautiful outlook on this whole thing. Also, Critical Kate submits a comment on Patreon. It says, one thing that surprised me about the opening cutscene was the first canonical mention of Samus accepting a bounty. Back in 2009, an IGN behind-the-scenes feature on the making of the Prime games revealed that Metroid Prime 3 was originally going to be a game where you travel around completing bounties, but Retro were told that Samus does not actually take bounties. Apparently, on the Japanese side, bounty hunter meant something more like a mercenary or warrior rather than someone who collects bounties. The point of the opening scene is clearly to demonstrate that Samus actually cares more about the mission than the money, with Samus ignoring Adam's observation that the bounty on this mission does not seem appropriate. But it's still pretty major to see the concept of bounties come up at all in a Metroid game.
You hate to see a freelancer take that L. Like, raise your rates, Samus. Like, it's been so long. And it's like, yeah, I know, but like, I'm really passionate about the project. I just feel like, I know I'm kind of taking an L here, but I don't know. It's not that big of a deal. Maybe it can lead to other things. It's a tale as old as time. That's right. Very relatable.
I did like in the opening. By the way, is it acceptable in 2021 for a game to open with this much text for like the backstory? Do people appreciate that because it's a throwback thing, or does it just feel cheap in this day and age?
I think it is if you've been waiting this long for a new entry, right? Like if Breath of the Wild 2 opens with like a 4-paragraph Star Wars crawl style, like I'm okay with it because it's like, yeah, catch me up. What's going on here? But yeah, no, I'm totally with you. I would have maybe liked something a little like a pre-rendered cutscene or something.
There's cool art in there for sure, but it's just one of those. Yeah.
I liked it.
You liked it. Isaac Monterose says, I really like the game, but the story is much thinner than I thought it'd be, since it's a sequel to Metroid Fusion. That is true. I assume it picks up in a big way in the second half, but it's pretty crazy that like outside of Adam just talking to you, it's like we're not seeing the Chozo like, oh, she's coming, run away, or like any like hint of that guy coming back.
No. It is exactly the right amount of story. I don't want any more story than this in a Metroid game.
I think we're probably gonna get it.
I don't know. I mean, I'm sure there's going to be something, I guess, that needs to explain that Chozo warlord or stuff. But like, I don't think we're going to get like some big monologue from the bad guy, or
it's going to turn into like a Last of Us situation.
Yeah,
Adam's going to be like, all right, Samus, sit down. I'm going to explain to you what you just experienced.
That was weird.
Or where do you think you are right now?
If there is explanation like that, I think it's got to be pretty minimal. I mean, especially with the precedent they're setting here, regardless of how they've done previous entries. Like, it just seems like this is not a story. Like, I love the fact, because like, okay, as someone who really enjoys Metroid games, I don't care about all the Chozo, Samus being raised by them, what's her suit made of, all of this kind of like that element of this series just is not great for me.
I hear you.
Yeah,
it is.
I'm inclined to agree with you, Joe. Like I wouldn't say that. So my thing with Metroid and like my background is like much more sparse. But like when I say like I love the story of Metroid Fusion, it means I love the general conceit and the plot. I think Metroid and a lot of Nintendo franchises, it has a cool plot. Like when you tweet it out, it's like, oh, that's a fun idea.
Alien is cool.
The writing is good. Like, and I feel similarly with Zelda, which I know is a little egregious to some people, but like, look, it's the same story each time. It is intriguing, and there's fun lore if you want to dig in.
Stay with us, Kyle. Stay with us.
I'm not crying at the writing of that game.
Stay with us, Kyle. Don't get mad.
Fine.
Stay with us, Kyle. No. I think you're totally right. Like it did make me laugh in the beginning of this game.
It's about the glider. What are you talking about, Kyle? You're talking about the glider. You don't talk about the plot points. Admit it. You know it to be true.
Kyle, have tears come out of your eyes while playing a Zelda game?
Yeah, I've talked about this, but it was for a lot of different reasons at the end of Breath of the Wild. So.
Oh, like you stubbed your toe?
No, I mean, yes, I just had them lay down in front of me. No. I mean, if we want a quick sidetrack, like sure. The sort of experience of that game was so moving. It wasn't necessarily the story, but the experience of that game was so moving to me that during the final boss fight, I teared up. And you got to couple that with me doing a separate battle with a print deadline. It was like, you know what I mean? Like I was like staying up super late playing this game. I was exhausted, while still having just this like one of the most compelling video game experiences I'd had in like a decade. So I was just like tearing up over the fact that I was like, I did it. I beat Ganondorf. This was insane. And now I got to write a review that Joe can rip apart and hand back to me.
Is it really a 10? Wow. That's kind of how he sounded.
We had that discussion.
And then lo and behold, it was.
I don't feel like I don't feel like I pushed back on that one very hard.
No, you really didn't. Yeah, it was just like, you sure?
That's how you know it's a 10 when you don't really have to ask.
That's right. Did you push back much on Ben Reeves's 975 for Metroid: Samus Returns? Do you remember? Is there a struggle?
No. I mean, I honestly, I mean, again, another sidetrack off a sidetrack, but pushing back on review scores isn't really something that I did very often. I want to I was always more concerned with making sure that the text lines up with the score that's given, rather than whether that score is, I mean, like, you know, eventually you just get to know the editors and you know that their opinion is their opinion, and it doesn't do any good to change that. I think that, especially when you're talking about giving a 10, I think that there gets to be some places where reviewers themselves even kind of like self-doubt and they want to like talk it through a little bit. So I'm like always happy to talk through that stuff, but I don't think I can't think of a single time when someone is like, I want to give this a 10, and I'm like, this isn't a 10.
Right. You fool. Yeah. Back on the story beat, real quick for Metroid, it made me laugh that like in the opening, it's like, here's the X parasite, a description of what it is. Here are Metroids, description of what they are. Both are gone now. It's like Metroids are extinct. It's like, then why are you telling us all this stuff? All right, I'm on.
So that people can say, don't worry about playing the other games. They have a great, convenient opening that explains everything.
Yeah. I mean, would anybody bet money that we don't see a Metroid in this game? Would anybody be so bold? Or is everybody just in agreement that, of course, a Metroid's going to be in this game?
Oh, of course a Metroid is going to be in
They say they're extinct, Joe.
Okay. I think Ganondorf might even show up in this game. That's how
I thought you killed him. What's going on here? See how the story is full of holes, Kyle?
It doesn't make sense. Any predictions for the story in the second half? I've seen like vague things and like bigger picture things that people are saying about the story in the second half, so I don't even want to reveal any of that.
I mean, I think that Chozo warrior will have some history with Samus, but even that I'm not super confident about, because that would take a bunch of dialogue, to like sort of explain, and I don't see that happening.
Right.
Adam's not going to tell you about your childhood.
He might. Right? He absolutely might. They can find some
Hello,
way.
Samus. You remember that guy? He used to bully you.
Or like, honestly, the Chozo actually speaks in the beginning. He says some line to Samus. So maybe it's a thing of Adam like, now I can translate Chozo for you. Danger, danger, Rangers. And then like there's just the Chozo are speaking and there's subtitles. I can see that happening.
I think there'll be this isn't really the story, but I think there'll be like an escape sequence, as there often is. It just seems like, oh, suddenly all the Emmys turned on or something silly like that, where it looks really cool to run through it and do it.
I mean, Joe Mama points out, there's the escape sequence before acquiring the Varia suit. That one sequence sums up a lot about the game, is intense and unexpected. I also love the organic changes in the environment. Like after that sequence, the way past the teleportal is blocked by the debris from the explosion, forcing you back to Daron. Yeah, that sequence kind of snuck up on me. That was really cool.
Yeah, that was really good.
Joe, you finished Samus Returns. Did you 100% it or just okay? If I remember correctly, like the reward for 100% in that game is a Ridley boss fight, right? Or is that just a standard part of the game?
The Ridley boss fight is standard. I didn't actually 100% it, but what the reward for 100% is there's some like there are Chozo memories. So it's like some basically some bits of history and images and stuff from the history of the Chozo. And this general that you meet up in the beginning of Dread is featured in there. So it's like,
oh, interesting.
A little bit of a tease at the time. Yeah.
Yeah. So like it implies that this general, because like the Chozo are supposedly extinct too. So
right.
So it sort of implies that this general is some sort of like betrayer to the Chozo race somehow, and is like he and some faction of his warriors are still like betrayed their kind and have sought refuge somewhere else.
It seems very Mandalorian.
That's all I know about it.
Here's my bold prediction: is I don't think you'll fight Ridley.
Really?
Maybe not. I don't know. I'm not going to be disappointed if I do, but I don't know. I feel like that Ridley doesn't fit here. And we got the Kraid boss fight. Maybe we'll get some other throwback boss fights. But I think Ridley might sit this one out. But I could be wrong.
This is probably obvious, but I think they're going to lean into the like Samus meeting her equivalent of parents or whoever with the Chozo. It's going to be kind of like the James Bond Skyfall type moment, right? Of just kind of like, oh, Samus, some connection to her origins and discussion about her connections back then.
Oh man, I feel like some of that stuff is like, a lot of the lore and story of Metroid happens behind the scenes. It's told in the pages of the instruction manuals and in supplementary material that Nintendo releases. They don't really tell a lot of this story in the game. like at least historically,
right,
with the exception of Other M, or I guess Metroid Prime and like the way scanning stuff. But I mean, for a game in the style of Metroid Dread, I think talking about how it, like, diving deep into Samus's personal history, family history, or anything like that, like, I think the most story we're going to get is just like some basic explanation of who the bad guy is and why you're fighting them.
Okay.
And that's going to be that. And then you go to the extras section, and then that's where it's going to show you some, you unlock some artwork that shows Samus with her bird dad or whatever. And yeah.
It's funny that you mentioned like the ancillary like content that's sort of in like random books and things, because now I'm like, I got the special edition of the game that comes with, like, the art book and stuff. I'm like, what if the plot was just in here, right? Like, just through
careful, don't leaf through that, Janet, you fool.
I know, yeah. It actually is separated by entry, so I won't look too much at the Dread stuff until later.
Somebody asked about that edition. Do you like it so far, Janet? The big
I honestly
thing?
Love it. I don't want to. I'm gonna put like a little thing on my watch because I don't want to talk about it too much. It's a freaking book and some art cards.
Wait, you
but
set
it's
a timer
gorgeous.
on your watch?
Yes, because I don't want to. I feel like I could talk about this thing forever. It's beautiful.
Maniac.
Really quick. It looks awesome. It's giant. It comes in like a great. The packaging's gorgeous. The front and back art. The front's just cover art, and the back is like a really badass picture of Samus. Even when you open it up on the inside, and I'm not gonna front y'all. When I bought this, I was like, I'm ready to risk it all today at this Target online, right? I'm just gonna get it. I don't know if this game is gonna be good.
Right.
I just feel like I feel this in my bones. I'm gonna buy this on a whim. And then I was like, well, one, the game is pretty good. And then two, I'm like, edition is gorgeous. Even the cardboard it comes in is etched on the inside with like the Emmys like outline.
That's cool.
Which is crazy. Like, I didn't even notice that until today. And I've opened it like 4 or 5 times. It comes with little art cards of like this specific storyline.
That's cool.
Which is super fun. It also helps clarify what the heck is going on. I'm like, this is storyline because that's like what the art cards were. The Steelbook, I own one other Steelbook, and it's for a game I adored.
Right.
But that Steelbook is just like gray, and it's steel, right? But this one's full color. It looks so good. And then the art book's just awesome. And then it also comes with 2 pins. So if you like love this game, or if you haven't gotten it yet and you're like, oh, I heard it's good, if you kind of trust that you're willing to take the potential L on, maybe if you don't like the game as much, it is so cool. I am so happy I bought it.
Oh, good.
Yeah, it's awesome. I can't recommend it enough.
Yeah, Ian Switage also wrote in talking about how fantastic it was and all the art packed in there. Rich McLaughlin submitted a comment and said, unlike most Metroid games, Samus now starts at the bottom and must ascend back to her ship. Talk about a deepest dive. Oh, Rich.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Actually, that would be a deepest ascent.
Yeah, but she already took the deepest dive, just like us. Hey, Skylar Timmons says, can we talk about that slide mechanic? For some odd reason, I find myself sliding everywhere I go like I rolled an Ocarina of Time. I don't think it moves me any faster, but it's just so dang satisfying to slide through holes or slide into a jump and melee, or even when I'm just running down a hallway. Also, I love the detail that Samus melees with her foot while sliding as opposed to her arm cannon while running. That is very good detail. That's a good slide. Great slide. No one's bad in the slide.
I feel like the areas are like, I mean, you could maybe make this argument with other Metroid areas too. Again, it's been a while, but I feel like the areas really cater to that too, because so much of it is like slanted or like these little small passageways. And because you're constantly like evading, it's like, well, of course I'm going to use the slide to like cut through this like area really quickly. And yeah, it's incredibly satisfying to do.
Yeah. Edgar H says, I'm loving the cutscenes during counters and boss fights. I've watched a few streamers. Very few of them actually bothered to counter. It makes the fight so much more fun and makes bosses so much easier. Counter, people. Counter, Edgar says. We're with you. Chuck Emmett. This made me outraged to see. He says, as cool as the boss fights are, they're just way too tough most of the time. Cray took me forever to finally beat. When I did, after an hour or so, I didn't feel excited or relieved. I was just frustrated and exhausted. I really wish there was a way to lower the difficulty, though refilling health with the amiibo is a sound if cheap way of forcing your way through it. You can refill your health with an amiibo? Yuck.
That's kind of cool. I kind of wish I knew that. People kept asking me like if I got the amiibo, and I just never was into the amiibo. The only amiibo I ever owned was the cereal box, the Mario cereal box.
Oh, that's right.
Which I no longer own because I moved across the country, and like you had to, when you pick the things that you're going to take with you to start in your life, the Mario cereal box is lower on that list.
Old cereal box did.
You're gonna regret that so hard.
Yeah, an old cereal box was like on the cutting room floor for that journey across country. I kind of found myself wanting that too, because I'm like, look, I know I could do it. Do I want to? It's debatable. But for me, like when it comes to stuff like that, and maybe it's just because we all like game so much for like this job, but like I don't know, take like a 5-minute. I think people need to take breaks more. Like people telling these stories of, and this is like no shade if this is your experience, because I have absolutely been that person on a boss fight for like an hour or something, especially because I did Demon Souls for the first time this year, and like I could not grind enough to make that night battle easier. I had to get the Crescent Falchion. It was a mess. Anyway, I understand the struggle, and I don't consider myself like super pro level or anything, but I just took a lot of breaks for that. Like I grabbed the Pro Controller. That wasn't working. I'm like, okay, cool. I'm going to just put this down and I'm just going to eat like my leftover Baskin Robbins ice cream. And I'm going to sit and be upset that I can't beat Big Lizard, but I want to be Big Lizard myself. I don't want to ask anybody to be Big Lizard for me. I want to do it.
That's right.
And then, I just picked up my sticks and did it again. I also use timers for 2 things. 1 for breaks, and then 2 for like
Talking
the time
about the
until
art
I
book?
take a break.
Oh.
What's up?
Talking about the art book?
Yeah, okay. I mean, like on the low too, if because otherwise you risk going too long, right? It's like, I'm going to sit here for 45 minutes. Like sometimes you got to sharpen the saw, y'all. Like it's the same for life. You're out here just trying to hack down that lizard tree, and you just take a break. Take 5 minutes, walk away. Some of y'all don't want to walk away. I encourage you to just put it away. Start tomorrow. It'll be easier.
That's right. Don't buy an amiibo. Don't ruin the game experience. Keep it pure, damn it. Nick says, I like that they withheld the morph ball for so long. When I finally, bye Joe. When I got it, it felt like coming home. Finally, I thought. It got me thinking about how good Nintendo is at linking IPs to a specific power-up or ability. And then Alan Liebold says, as a lifelong Metroid fan, it feels almost blasphemous to say this, but I think holding off on giving you the morph ball was a brilliant decision. When I finally did get it, it felt like reuniting with an old friend, and I had this whole new appreciation for it. Yeah, because that's normally one of the first, if not the first power-up you get? I mean, the original is the first, right?
Yeah, usually. Yeah.
Yeah, but it is nice. We haven't really talked about the abilities too much. Personally, it feels like there's a lot going on in this game. From someone who's, coming in somewhat naive to 2D Metroid, there's a lot of like, what is this door now compared to this door? It feels like they're throwing a lot at me. It's like, okay, just slow down, everybody. I'm trying to keep all these abilities in line, especially where it's at now, like the shifting thing and then just getting the speed boost thing. I feel like I need more time to kind of get used to the flow of using everything I have thus far. But how's everybody feeling about just the general abilities that you get?
Nothing crazy yet, I feel like.
Yeah? Pretty standard stuff?
Can you hear me okay? Am I still?
Yeah, we got you.
Sorry, I dropped out. Okay. I was actually I'm a little disappointed at the pacing of it. I kind of wanted new things to be happening more quickly.
Okay.
Like I wanted to be doing more cool tricks faster. I feel like it's been kind of slow for us to like not just. I agree that it was cool that the morph ball took as long as it did. That's a cool like subversion of expectation there, but I don't know. I feel like waiting as long as we had to do then to get the bomb after that.
Right.
And then like.
So what's fully new? Like what's the coolest new toy that you have so far?
I feel like the slide is the coolest thing.
Really?
The coolest new thing. And well, then that also ties into, there's still a lot of room to go. A lot of power-ups left to get in this game for me, but I guess I'm a little disappointed at how similar, like at how closely it's following the Super Metroid template for the kinds of things that you're getting.
Huh.
It's like, okay, speed boost, like the speed booster that was in the old game. The 3-way, the wide beam, they called it the spazer before, but like, so it's they're using all these very similar gates where it's just not like, even if you get the new capability at some point it's always satisfying in a Metroid game to like get an ability that you're familiar with and excited about. Yeah. I love getting the screw attack. I can't wait until I get the screw attack in this game. But you don't like, I feel like a lot of those steps, you don't need to recycle every step along the way there.
Okay,
right?
sure. What about like, is the diffusion blast the one that like goes through walls? Is that new?
It's technically new.
Okay.
Like, what you used to get, and this may even still be in the game, I don't know. What you used to get is something called the wave beam that would just go through. It would just go through all surfaces.
Oh, interesting.
This one,
get it much later.
Yeah. In this one, they don't want to let you just completely shoot through all surfaces all the time. So they give you charge it up, and then it can sort of has a little explosion impact.
Right.
But it's sort of a similar concept there.
Okay.
I am really excited actually to see how this, I said the slide before, but this dash, that like cool Eon dash thing.
Yeah, the blink basically.
I haven't really had it long enough to really see how to apply it, but I am excited for the possibilities of that one also.
I like that one a lot too, just because it's fun to move. I think they give it to you like at a great spot too, where it's like you just spent your time slogging through that water area. And one of my other things is I feel like games don't need water levels unless you're an underwater game.
It's kind of
you can have water.
Yes.
That's it. Like when Mario had water, it was bad. When this had water, I wouldn't say it's actively bad. Like I'm having a terrible time. The design is still there. And part of the puzzle there is like clearing out those areas and making them more traversable. But like nothing pained me like when I fell down slowly through the water and I saw the map just clear out in the ugliest shape. Yes. And I slowly walked my way up, and then there's that enemy that's like kind of like a jellyfish, and it moves so slowly. I'm like, are you even gonna attack me? And then it did, but hope I don't fall. Like it just was not. It wasn't exciting, right? It was a slog a little bit, and then you get the little speed dash, and it's great.
All that is in place to make the gravity suit just like an exciting upgrade, right?
Gravity suit.
Once you move through the water without any sort of slowdown, it's going to feel so good because you took so much time getting annoyed by it.
Yeah, because it's like moving slow is one thing, but the part that kills me about the water is like just how it affects jumping out of it. Like I should be able to make this jump, but the fact that the water is like making me chug just a little bit trying to get out there is just infuriating.
Or like and I don't know if anyone else did this. I feel like maybe y'all had the foresight to realize that like it's not in the cards, but I will say one part where I gave into temptation of like, maybe I can cheese this is there was an area that there was like an upgrade, but it had those like bricks that like fall right underneath you. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, maybe there's enough space here where I can just jump. And I tried it like, I had to be at least 5 times, but to like retry, you have to like slowly go through the water and then come back up around. And it was like a terrible feeling. But like once I got like the little zoop ability is kind of how I think of it in my mind. Like besides the door thing, which is they like give it to you and then you have to get out using it. I just liked it for moving around. Like it was just cool to like jump in and just like quickly just kind of do a dash and just kind of quickly maneuver around the space. I think one con of the abilities is because there's like the familiarity where like you need to have certain abilities because it's Metroid. You gotta turn into the morph ball, you gotta do these other things. And I'm not against that because I think that kind of needs to be there. It is what the series is. But because of that, it makes it so that there's less intrigue because you already know some abilities based on history. And then you already know some abilities based on like common sense environmental deduction, where it's like, okay, even if you don't know that you're going to cling to the magnet walls, it's like, hey, what's this big blue thing?
A lot of blue over here. It's got
to be something, right? So I think my favorite thing in Metroidvanias or games that pull on Metroidvania style rolling out of upgrades is when I don't when it doesn't click till I get the ability or something like that. When I feel a little bit more surprised by, oh, now like this environmental cue makes sense. Like that happened a lot for me in Chicory, which sort of rolls out its abilities in a very Metroidvania style. Yeah. But here I don't really get that same kind of surprise. So I do feel like I'm kind of missing that.
It's very gamey. It's very lock and key. Like, hey, here's this big thing. I wonder what you need to open that. It's like, okay, I know exactly where to go back to once I get it. Yeah, it seems very black and white there.
Yeah, and I think if you look at a game, I know, Jenny, you said you haven't played Axiom Verge, but I mean, like, I think the comparing Axiom Verge 1 and 2 is a lot of, I guess, kind of what I was hoping for a little more out of Dread that I haven't been seeing so far, which is just like a lot more strangeness. That there are certain elements of like the series identity that feel consistent, but at the same time, just like surprises, things that you just don't know. You don't know what's coming and you don't know what to do with them like in Metroid, you know what to do with the abilities before you even get the abilities.
I will say, I bet. Hang on, I'm thinking now. I bet a majority of people playing this game on Switch have not played or at least finished a 2D Metroid game before. Like, we see early reports that the sales numbers are huge. Like, it's been away for so long that I think this is very much an old timer's complaint here.
Oh yeah, absolutely it is. And I'm not, I should say this ties into what I was saying before about, like, it's a lot more about what I personally, as a fan of the series, want. I don't think it diminishes from like the overall quality of the game.
Right.
At all, in terms of like other people's ability to like jump in and enjoy those things. Like, the reason they're so reusable or like reapplicable is because they're like really cool and smart design tricks that you can use in a game like this.
And honestly, even somebody who works in the industry and whatnot, like, still when I got the speed boost, he was like, oh, that's right, that was a thing from Super Metroid. Like, it wasn't on the tip of my tongue. They're like, oh, okay, when's the speed boost coming? These are still kind of surprising things to run into. Which, by the way, that I'm confused about it. The shine spark that comes with the speed boost, I read the tutorial a couple times. I don't know what that was. I don't know what it meant. What is that? What am I missing out on?
You run.
Yeah.
And then while you're running, press down. So like while you're running with your speed boost, just press down. And then Samus is going to like glow purple. And then you press the jump button. And then Samus is going to like hover in place for a second.
Oh,
and in that second where she's hovering in place, you hold up, left, right, or down, and then she'll launch off in that direction.
See, it's
I would love if none of that was true and you were just making stuff up for Ben.
All right, well, this is locked in.
Spend his whole night trying to like calibrate this.
I was actually surprised that it tutorialized it because often it's not required to finish the game, and it's kind of like a secret, like borderline secret ability.
Really?
To let you get some bonus stuff, like in Fusion in particular. Like, there's some areas that are entirely optional that you get with the Shine Spark, and it does not tell you how to do it in the game.
Yeah, I'll be damned.
In Super Metroid, a dumb bird gives you a tutorial for it, like wordlessly.
You said there's no story.
You fall into this like deep pit, and you have no idea how to get out until you watch this bird use its own version of speed boost. Like, this bird does the jump and Shine Spark up.
Gotcha.
It's very funny.
Craig Belmont says, so far, the only difficult upgrade that I hunted is a Missile Tank Plus that is behind speed boost blocks suspended on a platform. Bloodworth of Easy Allies has a video of this on Twitter. Normally, the hardest upgrades in Metroid require you to block hunt, which is just shooting every block on the ceiling, floor, and wall until you found the upgrade. This exact Missile Tank Plus in Dread requires you to speed boost and hold that speed boost through a couple of screen transitions, wall jumps, and a slide. This obstacle course challenge is the exact thing I've wanted from the Metroid franchise and other Metroidvanias. This kind of challenge is infinitely more fun than shooting every block on the screen. Yeah, I missed that one, I believe, but just hold the speed boost running, I guess. But I haven't really messed around with speed boost too much because it's basically the stopping point here.
Yeah. I played for a little while longer after that just to like get to a save room, basically.
You monster. That's why
I just the software and now I'm scared.
I got to the save room and then took like a step into the next screen and saw that I was already at the next upgrade. So I was like, oh weird. I better stop. So
Thomas Damgard says, there's a lot of standing on pressure plates in this game, don't you think? Yeah, Chozo have terrible hands, so all their buttons need to just be big pressure plates on the floor that those weird bird things can just stand on. Are you ready for some miscellaneous comments?
Yeah.
All right, goes a little something like this. L-Train loves playing with headphones. He said it really adds a lot to the sound experience. Thank you, L-Train. Wedkin submitted a comment over on Patreon and said, I am shocked to say that the low health beeping noise is somehow not annoying. It's subtle and seems to fade into the background after a few seconds. It's maybe the first in video game history. Yeah, I'll be damned. GRN writes in and says, one small detail that is very cool and helpful is that when you approach a room that is a heat or a cold hazard, you can see the hot/cold air billowing out of the doorway before you enter. This little graphic alerts you to potentially dangerous areas ahead, which is a nice touch. Yeah, I caught that eventually.
Samus Returns did that too.
Oh, that's super smart. I do love that.
I just go in there anyway.
I do too.
Like, let me just double
feeling.
check. Like, I don't know why I'm like this.
How hot can it really be?
It cracks me up though, like especially in the beginning before I noticed that, just like running into a room and having more like, yeah, and then like run back immediately. Like, it's always this funny transition. Oh, poor Samus. She's had a very rough life. This one is tiny. Robert Zayas writes in and says, some of the details in this game are blowing my aging mind. As I was moving from one room to another, an enemy robot shot a laser blast at me. I was thinking, I'm on my way out, and like all Metroidvanias, what happens in one room doesn't impact the other, right? Wrong! As soon as I entered the room, the laser blast made its grand reappearance and hit me in the back. Metroidvania mechanics changed forever? I would assume this has been around in other games for a while, but Roberto, we're glad you're with us. Miguel Majaj writes in and says, I'm not sure if I'm crazy or not, but the one thing that has my attention in the game, the one thing, is Samus's shoes. I don't remember her boots looking so bulky. Had to Google pictures to make sure I'm not misremembering her fusion suit or anything. I don't know. Good shoes, I guess.
The boots are made for walking.
That's right. And speed walking. Derek O writes in and says, greetings, Deepest Divers. Just want to say I really love the Dread suit design. Based on a post on Nintendo's website leading up to launch, they said the suit is the organic parts left from fusion regenerating back to the original power suit. And Dread finds it at an in-between stage. They really nailed this look with the armor plating held together with a sinewy muscle in the cracks and joints. Yeah, there's a lot of love. People are disturbed by the upgrade to the Varia suit because they're like, oh man, I love that original suit design. It's kind of like every Iron Man film. You have to have your big new iconic suit, and so it's always changing.
Yeah, it's a really good suit. My favorite was always the Fusion one. So like this is very much like, as they mentioned, like pulling on that.
Yeah, for sure. Louis K, shocking we haven't mentioned this yet, says the death animation with the suit busting off is mwah, chef's kiss. It looks unbelievable, which does take the sting out of dying. Also, Teleportal is a god tier name for a shortcut. Teleportal's very good. Yeah, the first time I saw that death animation, it was like at the first boss, I guess, like the Scorpion guy. Where it's like, wait, what is this? There's a different game over screen from something that's not an Emmy. But yeah, it looks fantastic. Steister says, one thing that sticks out to me about the game is the lighting. The developers use it in so many interesting ways to create a real sense of the atmosphere. Crawling through dark powered down areas when you first arrive, hazy, gray filtered areas for Emmy zones, Samus's accent colors in her suit glowing bright green in dark map rooms. It goes a long way to add variety instead of tone. And then Alfredo says the charge beam lights up the wall when Samus is facing it. That is very good. Shadys42 says, hello, diving crew. Is it weirding anyone else out that missile packs are now 2 and 10 and not the standard 5? Yeah, I think it's basically unplayable. I'm with you, Shadys42.
This is the first I'm hearing about it.
Let's see. Joe Dean writes in and says, hey, Dreadnoughts. I thought it might be fun to compare stats. I'm currently sitting at 5 health tanks, 87 missiles, 3 hours and 45 minutes of playtime, and 26% on overall items. I haven't boosted my missiles or energy tanks with the amiibo, so these are 100% legit stats. So just hypothesizing. Oh, and then he goes on to some story stuff. But yeah, how's everybody doing stat-wise? I'm at 3 health tanks, I guess, probably around 50, 60 missiles.
I got 5 and 69 missiles.
Okay, nice.
I don't know. I don't have it in front of me right now. I know I have 5 health tanks and 80 something missiles.
Okay.
And I have like 43 missiles and like, I don't know, 2 or 3 health tanks.
Okay.
Something like that.
We're very much on the same page here. Yeah, I don't know about the playtime. I couldn't find it. I think it was after I was done playing, it was just showing like my last playtime. But I'm curious like for the finished stats and stuff to see how it goes. I know people in the Discord are comparing their 100% completion runs and that playtime and stuff. So it's fun to see those. We'll go over all this stuff in the next discussion. Joe Dean has a theory though. He says, just hypothesizing here. What if we aren't actually Samus in this game? What if we're another X clone or something like that? We don't know what that Chozo bro did in the beginning and we can't fully trust Samus's AI. That seems like a stretch of that you're not Samus. You're just like some variant.
If we're not Samus, who is in the suit when we die? Just another blonde woman?
I mean, there's
it's just
clones,
there's
Dark
a
Samus,
yeah.
Metroid Prime 3.
She's just a golden Samus instead of Dark Samus, I think. Something like that. John Richard says, writes in with a very important question asking, I'm having fun, right? My reaction time is slow. I keep forgetting which trigger I need to click to slide. The enemies are killing me a lot, and I feel like I'm lost about 98 to 99% of the time. I'm having fun though, right? Can anybody tell John Richards if he's having fun?
That's fun.
That is fun?
That's good.
Okay. Joe, I mean, are you having a good time so far?
Yeah. Yeah, I really am. I think, like I said, there are things about it, like any disappointment that I have is like purely coming from my own expectations and like what I want, very specifically my personal taste in a Metroid game.
Yeah.
But like even that, I can't deny just like the level of like polish and just like design prowess going on in this game in terms of, like for instance, a huge problem with games in this style in general is that getting lost.
Yeah.
And is that need to backtrack and to not really have a clear sense of where you're supposed to be going next. And I think this game is one of the best recent examples I can think of in terms of funneling you and giving you cues to let you know that this is the right way forward. Whether it's things collapsing behind you so you can't go the way you came, or like that area where you're outrunning it as it keeps getting hotter and hotter, right?
Yeah.
It's like when that happened to me, I was like, oh, well, this is clearly a story thing that is supposed to be happening now, right? It's sort of like gives you those cues that you're going in the right spot compared to something like I brought up Axiom Verge, even though it's probably still my game of the year so far. But a big problem for me in that game was just the like lack of direction. And sometimes you need a certain upgrade to progress, but you don't know that upgrade exists and you don't know where to get it. So you're just left with that. I mean, to use the Metroid terminology, it's like you're just left to bomb every wall and hope that you can find out where you're supposed to go. And you don't have to do that in Dread, which I appreciate.
It's really tough when the core of the genre is exploration. You like exploration, right? You explored when you were a kid. It's like, well, yeah, but I want that right level of exploration. It seems like by and large, some people are definitely on either side of the spectrum, but from the comments, it seems like they've hit it here. And yeah, there's a comment as well, just talking about like, hey, hats off to Mercury Steam. Like, it's a tall order, but it seems like they are threading about every needle for newcomers, old school fans. Like, the fact that this game exists at all is a miracle coming from Nintendo these days. And the fact that they found a dev as talented as Mercury Steam to actually piece this thing together is amazing. I don't know, maybe this is weird, but I feel like it's been a while since there's been a game released that it feels like everybody's rooting for as hard as they're rooting for Metroid Dread. Right? Doesn't it feel like the entire industry is just like, go Dread, go! Like, we need you, buddy, on so many levels. And it's kind of a nice feeling.
Yeah, I always feel like the Metroid fandom is always a very like vocal minority.
Yes.
Right? Like if you're to judge by, like, it seems like everyone for the last 13 years has been shouting, give us another 2D Metroid, Nintendo.
And they did, and no one bought it.
Right. Well,
yeah, because that's also part of the fandom. And I know this is going to like really upset people like who are like Joe, but maybe have a way worse attitude than Joe, where it's like, I was there, I played all this stuff. I'm like, look, I love Metroid. And yet when I look back on what I actually played, it ain't really much. So I'm not going to front, I'm part of the problem. But I think this was the perfect storm of, one, the game's great, thank God, because everyone was looking forward to it. I think it would have been really salty if it didn't quite land. But two, I said at the top, it's been a quiet year on the Nintendo Switch. I love my Switch. I'm always looking for an excuse to play it. And oh my God, what did I do this year on the Switch? Bravely Default 2, WarioWare, this. I was disappointed by Snap. Like, I just have sad stories on the Nintendo Switch of having to return games to GameStop. So this is finally a win. It's like, oh, I've just been needing to, like, we got to charge the Pro Controller because that thing died 8 months ago.
Victory!
From lack of use. Yes. So exciting to finally have, like, a nice, clear, strong answer for, like, what's the best experience on Switch this year.
Right.
Metroid Dread is going to be up there for most people.
Yeah. It's crazy. I did like a Twitter poll from MinnMax's Twitter account. Like, hey, did you buy Metroid Dread? And maybe it's a little bit skewed from the Deepest Dive. I think there's a couple people that wouldn't have bought it that bought it for the Deepest Dive, which is very sweet. Thank you so much, everybody. Hope you're enjoying yourselves. But 46% bought it. which is pretty high for a game. Like, it's tough to calculate what the NPD total sales are going to be or something based on that, but it's like, that seems shocking. And I know Kyle even mentioned that, like, if my Twitter timeline is any indication, everybody in the world has bought Metroid Dread, right? Did you say something like that?
Yeah, something like, yeah. It felt like everyone had bought it, which is it's good.
Everybody who's anybody's playing this thing. So there's going to be a lot more to talk about in the second half of the Deepest Dive. If you've enjoyed this format, if you want to keep this format rolling into the future for more games and also unlock the Deepest Dive in a podcast form for this discussion, all past discussions, all future discussions, you can head on over to patreon.com/MinnMax with 2 N's. We appreciate the support there. We are inching closer to that goal of hitting 2,700 supporters. Plus our anniversary is coming up. It's our second anniversary. So it's a nice, instead of getting us what is the typical gift for the second anniversary, which I looked into it, it's cotton. Which is like, no one wants to talk about cotton. Just give us the nice gift of unlocking the podcast version of the Deepest Dive and enjoy the second half of this discussion. Or submit a comment about the second half, because we'd love to hear your thoughts on the game.
On my second wedding anniversary, I gave my wife $5 monthly support on Patreon.
Oh, really? That's beautiful, man. That's beautiful. Obviously, thank you to everybody who is playing along with us for the Deepest Dive. Everybody who submitted a comment, you're all champions. We appreciate it. For the next batch, get specific. Zoom really far in. Take your corner of the game and say, this is mine. I'm going to talk about it. Don't just talk about like Emmys like everybody else. Really zoom in. We appreciate it. Janet, any wise words before we sign off here?
Take a break if you need to. And keep in mind that it's about having fun and having a good time. So if part of that is you keeping up with us, make sure you play in time for the next episode. But if part of that is going at your own pace and catching this later, go ahead and do that too. That's beautiful. And Kyle, what do you think, man?
She's right. She nailed it.
That's right.
Good game. I want to play more.
Right. Yeah, it seems like Kyle, you're the most anxious to anybody, but like, I got to get back to this right now. My God.
I'm excited to play more tonight, 100%.
Do you think you're the hottest out of this group on the game?
I guess so. I don't know.
Look at
I
this
didn't
guy.
get the sense that anyone disliked it. I don't know. It's like a weird metric.
Yeah. Well, look, we'll figure it out.
This should be how we review all games. Like, where does Kyle land in relation to everybody else?
Are we hotter than Kyle is the new review metric for every game, I think is the number one standard. All right, everybody. Thanks so much for watching or listening to The Deepest Dive. We'll be back next week. We'll be collecting comments. We'll have a post up on Patreon on Monday, October 18th. So supporters at any tier, jump on over there. Even that $2 tier, submit a comment. We'll read it during our next discussion. Cool.
Hey, Ben.
Yeah.
What if someone hasn't fully completed the game by the next time that is posted? Can they still leave a comment about how far they've gotten?
My God, Joe, they're welcome to comment about anything under the sun. That's right. If you pick up the game and you said, oh, these idiots, why didn't they talk about the intro screen? It's iconic. We'll still take mop-up comments for anything. So I'm sorry for going fast for you, but we're doing our best to catch everybody. So again, thanks for your support. Couldn't do it without you. Hats off to helping us create the best most discussion about Metroid Dread on the internet. This ending has gone on for longer than Return of the King over here. All right, thanks so much, everybody. We'll be back next week. Bye. Content like this exists because of you. Thank you so much for subscribing on YouTube, sharing it with a friend, and especially for supporting MinnMax on Patreon. Supporters at any tier on Patreon unlock access to MinnMax's Discord, the friendliest place on the internet, where you can compete in game trivia every month to win prizes with our show Trivia Tower. Thanks so much for watching and sharing our stuff, everybody.